I have one thing to say, and it would be that either some people are intentionally sabotaging things, or I can't believe that they're that stupid. Okay, that aside, we're here at the Voice of College Football as we hear on a regular basis to take your comments, your questions, of course, in the live chat, talk college football with you, and open up the phone lines at 860-499-3332. Appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. I got to say, I don't know exactly what time it is. We were supposed to be on at 8 p.m. Eastern time, but life happens, so I apologize for that. And you wanted me to look pretty, right? Good luck. No, there were other things that got in the way. Yeah, I'm not going to trash that company. I was about to. Okay, they may want to sponsor us at some point. We may want their money. And it's actually a tremendous company in terms of building products. So one faulty product, not an issue. On to another product. When you've got one contact that is literally a month old and the other contact that is literally like 7 years old, you would think that you would have issues with the one that's outdated. But all right, it was just my time to sit down and start off with a rant for the night. So that's where we're at, an unprofessional rant that you guys have no idea what I'm talking about. But we will talk on college football. And, you know, thank God, unless somebody brings it up tonight. Unless somebody brings it up. And, of course, I will honor all college football comments and questions, phone calls. But unless somebody brings it up tonight, I am not going to utter the word NIL. I am so freaking sick of NIL. Don't misinterpret that. That doesn't mean I'm against it. It's not. Posted a video in 2013 saying, let's get ahead of this. Let's do something about it. And let's do it right. But the idiots that organized college football could not see it coming, or they were just making too much money. And I don't have an explanation for it. People in power, I don't have an explanation for really most people in power these days, anywhere, on any level, in any area of life. But the morons that run college football are just exactly that. Not every one of them. I'm not pointing fingers at every specific person. There are some tremendous people out there, much smarter than me, much more on top of it than me. But when you put them all together, we have had a complete mess and debacle concerning the direction of college football over the past decade. And NIL is one of the issues. And we do have some people that comment from time to time and say, hey, Mark, and everybody else, it's going to work itself out. Just let it flush itself out. And I have no definitive response to that, to say you're a moron, you don't know what you're talking about, or to say you're absolutely right. They could be right. Again, if Nick Saban, when asked about NIL just a couple weeks after it was introduced and hit the public and was legalized the first day of July last summer, if he was wise enough to say, don't ask me about NIL, I will answer these questions in 1 year. He made that statement at SEC Media Days. He said, I don't pretend to know what's going to happen. And if somebody is smart and wise and as ingrained in the business and the industry, much more so than I am, Nick Saban is going to make that comment and say, I'm backing off. Don't ask me to try to predict how this is going to go. Then far be it for me at this stage of the game, even though we've learned so much in 9 or 10 months. But in terms of, so are some of our worst concerns, our worst fears, let's say, fears is a heavy word. I don't take it that seriously, but our worst concerns have come to fruition. So now we're at a point in which it needs to be regulated, fixed. Yes, I am Mr. Free Marketplace above and beyond anything else. But there are regulations. There are reasons to regulate to a certain extent everything that is a free marketplace. Okay, I said way too much about NIL. And again, it is my least favorite topic within college football. Yeah. And probably forever will be. I hope it is. I hope nothing else displaces it, because then we're really in trouble. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. And since I don't have my contacts in, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to read your comments. I'm going to have to blow up the screen about 50 times. But appreciate it, everybody being here. And the topic of the night, no, is not what I vaguely alluded to off the top. That is much more important. But no, that is not the topic of the night, because I would probably be banned for life. It is not NIL, certainly, and it is not anything else I touched upon regarding contacts or anything else or equipment issues. It is none of that. It is scheduling. You know, I love scheduling. I like a good scheduling conversation in college football. I love a good conference. This is not concerning realignment, but restructuring within the conferences. I'm all about that. You guys know that. I produced a video a couple of hours ago. As soon as all this stuff came to be, shoot, I've been thinking about this for ever. Actually, the video that I produced today was concerning the ACC, and I targeted the ACC because the ACC seems to be out in front of this conversation more so than the other conferences. At least they've made it public what their approach is going to be. It seems as though they've decided on the approach, the format. They haven't plugged in the teams. So I decided to hit on the ACC first. But I did nothing more than, for half the video, go over the ACC model and what championship games we would have seen in a 1 versus 2 matchup in the ACC, regardless of division, over the past 10 or 11 years since 2010, than what we have seen. And it's about split in regards to having seen a different matchup versus what we got under the division format. It's about half and half. But the other half of the video is basically unveiling my format, my formula, and that hasn't changed. So you guys have probably seen that in the past, years and years and years ago. So I'm not unveiling anything new because I have no reason to change my format or the way I would approach conference or out of conference scheduling, because I think it would work. Well, I know it would work because it makes the most sense. It makes the most sense. We seem to be short on that in this country these days. It makes the most sense, and it's also equitable. I don't want one team in a conference facing murderer's row and another team facing a layup every week and then say they're competing for the same championship. That's moronic. So we don't want that. Don't want that. And it doesn't need to be. You can protect the rivalries, still have a schedule that is fair and equitable. All right. But welcome into the Voice of College Football, everyone. I will open up the phone lines when it appears as though we want to take calls, when people are ready to talk. But let's first look at the comments here. Oh, that's right. I almost forgot. I can't go back and look at old comments. Can't do that. No. We'll not do that. I've been reprimanded. I don't want to call out the real MVP in particular, but he's the only one that comes to mind that I know. Oh, it was also a Reasonable Gump, the real MVP, and a few others calling me out for looking at all the comments and going through all the comments. So we will not do that anymore. we're going to go straight to, so if you make any comments before I get to the comments, keep in mind, they're not going to be seen by me. I will not be responding to any comments prior to, must be 8:22, huh? 8:23 now. So we will go to the last comment. Can't do it, Uncle Rico. Can't do it. Ian from Akron, hit the like button. You ingrates. That's, you know who I remember always saying the word ingrate, because he was directing it at his close pal, bosom buddy, lifelong buddy, pal, insert. I haven't seen the show in ages, but I have consumed thousands and thousands of hours of the Flintstones. But Fred used to always say that to Barney. He would call him an ingrate. I don't remember anybody else saying that. That's a great word. Gary doesn't mind if I don't read earlier comments. LBC Trojan looking to go to the Big Ten. And when all that was being rumored about when everybody was commenting, I'm looking at some of the comments, when everyone out there, when everything cut loose with Texas, Oklahoma, and then there were all sorts of rumors out there about USC/UCLA or /Oregon coming to the Big Ten, I thought, would USC fans like that? Would UCLA fans like that? Just thinking that they're these outliers, they're these satellite schools for the Big Ten way out on the West Coast. I don't know, but certainly our guy LBC Trojan says he would like to go to the Big Ten. Daniel says he'd give up a bunch of teams in the Big Ten for USC. Wow, you guys are nothing about tradition. Now the Rutgers USC trade, who cares about Rutgers? And yes, voice of college football loves Rutgers football. It's just not a Big Ten school yet. It just doesn't, if they disappeared tomorrow, their mark on Big Ten football history is Maryland. Mark on Big Ten football history, 0. It's actually negative. They're both negatives. Ohio State and USC is a rivalry. Well, it became one there in the 70s to a certain extent, in such a way as the Cowboys and the Steelers became a rivalry in the 70s because of postseason matchups that were just the matchups. And while we're on the subject of USC, we launched our USC Live Show this week. Hopefully everybody caught that. That was on Tuesday at 4 o'clock Eastern, so 1 o'clock Pacific time, where it counts, of course. 1 o'clock Pacific every Tuesday. We're going live with USC Talk. Just when I said I wouldn't start any more channels, of course, somebody gave me reason to a couple days later with South Carolina. So subscribe to that channel, and as Gary would let you know, I think it was Gary, subscribe before 1,000. After 1,000, you better watch the videos. By the looks of my last video on this main channel, shoot. I could say the same thing about the main channel. My goodness. Nobody was too into the ACC scheduling situation. A serious tie-up down here. Okay, we will open up the phone lines, 860-499-3332. Gary's going to give us a view on the ACC scheduling video. I thought that would be big. We had some recent videos that did pretty well, and I'm trying to not produce videos that nobody's going to like. And speaking of which, Uncle Rico, hey. Got to address this one. Willie likes my shirt. Thank you, Willie. It's an old one, but I got it out. I used to wear polos all the time. I was a big polo shirt guy, and really I still like them. I just never wear them. It's just a difference. Basically, there's become a wardrobe difference between Mark coming home from ESPN or getting ready to go to work at ESPN, dressing for the videos and the live streams and so forth, versus Mark lounging around his house all day, working from home and producing videos. Much different presentation there. But as Uncle Rico states here, hey, the $4.99 is to chip in for my ability to get through the video with Steve Dace and his team talent, whatever rankings. Yes, I get that confused too. Total team talent rank. I think I got it that time. I get the team and the total and the all. Yes, the team total team talent rankings. Total team talent rankings. More patient and understanding person than me. Well, I clearly stated they make total sense. They do. So, man, I really feel like blasting away at a lot of stuff today. There's a lot of, I've got a bad habit of the word idiot and moron coming out of my mouth too quickly. There are individuals online. It's not difficult to whether produce a video or write a column or write an article, whatever you do online, or do a social media post on Twitter or Facebook and throw out some kind of ranking. That's easy to do. We can all do that. Everybody in this chat can produce a top 25 preseason ranking or a top 10 quarterbacks, or you can all do it. Everybody can do it. It's not difficult to do it. To do it well, that's a different thing. To do it well, to do it with substance, to do it with some type of logic, some type of an approach. Well, that's different. So while I'm into, Uncle Rico, lists, rankings, ratings, all that, I'm not into arbitrary crap. Not into that. Drives me nuts. I get suckered into it sometimes. Usually not in sports, though. What did I look at the other day? There was something yesterday. Twitter pulls me in all the time, and I've got to let them know I'm not interested in this. I got to hit the little three-pronged drop down that says, I'm not interested in, why am I seeing this? Yes, why am I seeing this? I don't follow this. I don't follow this person. I don't want to see this. But sometimes I get suckered into just, oh my goodness, just dumb stuff. Dumb stuff, because it's a list, it's a ranking, and I want to know where my team or my guy is or whatever. I just want to see if the person knows what they're talking about. Well, 19 out of 20 times, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't have a clue. I saw somebody post, this was today, and you should be able to find this if you follow me on Twitter, and even if you don't, because I responded. So I think if you go to all my replies, it'll come up quickly. I'm not like tweeting every 13 minutes, so you should be able to find it. But this individual ranked the top 20 running backs in the history of the NFL, which, again, almost anyone here could do if you're into the NFL and do it somewhat legitimately. Sure, we're going to have an issue with number 5 should be number 8. Number 3 should be number 6. Sure, 14 should be 11. Okay. But oh my word, this was just a train wreck. Like this person just, I know we have fact checkers for important stuff. Not that they're legit or they get it right either by any stretch. I won't get into that. But we have fact checkers for important stuff on social media. I would love to nominate myself as a fact checker for crap, sports crap. Okay. But thank you, Uncle Rico. So I didn't finish. I'm good with Steve Dace's total team talent rankings. I got it. Total team talent rankings. I'm good with them because they make sense. Are they perfect? No. I did have a huge issue with, and he can explain it 52 different ways to me, and I just can't fathom in any such way how Michigan has a more talented roster than Ohio State. They did not last year have a more talented roster. All you have to do is look at the recruiting rankings. They do not have a more talented roster. And then on top of that, they lost their 3 best defensive players, their 1,000-yard running back, their best offensive lineman. I don't get it. So anyway, and then it also includes the 22 class coming in, and Ohio State has 2 5-star defensive players and 8 defensive players, just defense, 8 defensive players that are ranked in the top 25 at their position. So the Ohio State recruiting class of 22, now who knows how they're going to play? Not talking about that, talking about how are they ranked and rated right this second. Ohio State number 4, Michigan number 8. Okay, that seems close, but I've stated this before. If you look at the ratings, the points, the point differential difference between Ohio State at 4 and Michigan at 8 is the same as Michigan at 8 and whoever's at 23. So, Uncle Rico, Steve's amazing. Funny thing about Steve, this is the only guy. This is the only guy, and I will admit this. I'll be very. I guess this is my night to be a little more transparent. This is the one guy that I have to admit there has not been any guest I've ever had on, or any person that has asked me on their podcast or their videos that I thought more than a second about. Okay, I'll just show up. Just show up. That's all I do for all these videos. Just show up. All these live streams. I'm sorry to break it to you. The preparation is minimal. I would like it to be more. It just has to be minimal. That's just where we are. But it doesn't cross my mind. Like if, let me think about this. If Colin Cowherd asked me to come on tomorrow, and we were going to talk college football, which is in my wheelhouse, not necessarily in his wheelhouse. He's a smart guy. He's talented. I think his show's phenomenal. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I used to listen or watch it all the time. I think he's one of the best in the business. And I know as soon as I bring up Cowherd, half of you are going to be like, he sucks, and half are going to be like, he's amazing. He's polarizing. But I think he's one of the most talented individuals in the business to do what he does. But I really, other than knowing millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people, I guess millions, whatever it is, are going to be listening to me, I wouldn't think twice about it. I would just make the phone call at the time that I was supposed to make the phone call, and I'd start talking about college football. Got to admit, Steve is the only person that the first time, and even subsequent times after that, not so much now, but subsequent times after that, I thought, this guy's sharp. He can talk about anything. He is the gift of gab. This isn't a good thing to admit here. I don't have the gift of gab. I don't. Can I talk? Well, I hope so. I'm a better writer than I am a broadcaster. But I'm more measured with my words, think things through. Yeah, I'm just It's different that way. But Steve has the gift of gab. He can talk about anything and talk about it, not anything, but within reason, talk about it capably. So I thought, my goodness, I'm going to have to be on my game. He is the only person I've ever gone on any radio shows. I don't know what the deal is with the radio shows either. This is kind of strange. I got 34,000 subs. I got about 100,000 total on all the channels. You would think radio shows would find us here. But when I had like 100 subs, I was going on radio shows. There was a radio show down. Oh, man. I thought I wasn't going to remember his name. I do. Scott, but I can't remember his last name. Great guy. Has a radio show that's carried on about 5 stations down in the Panhandle, Southern Alabama, Louisiana, across the Panhandle, the Southeast, along that line of. I think there's actually a route that runs all the way through there: Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama. I know I did not put them in order on into the Panhandle, but he used to have me on all the time. Actually, I was on every certain day of the week anyway, for months and months and months. I had like 100 subs at the time. And, there were radio stations in South Carolina, Arkansas. I forget where else, some other ones that were nice. The most recent one that I can remember was out in LA, ESPN LA. And I apologize, I can't remember this guy's name. Had me on probably 2 years ago, something like that. But anyway, none of those conversations. Again, Steve Dace, I thought, man, I got to be on my game. That's never crossed my mind with anybody else. All right, I know you guys aren't here to listen to me rant. This is the exception, of course. This is the exception, of course, to the idea of only reading the comments that are current. Again, for anybody who's leaving comments and you expect me to read them, I'm only reading current comments. I've been directed that way by the viewers. But our guy Josh at Get Business Credit, thank you so much for that, Josh. That is much appreciated. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that. Been super busy. I can believe that. Josh is a phenomenal guy. He's got a phenomenal YouTube channel right here, Get Business Credit. So sounds just like it operates. If you're looking for business credit, even if you don't have great credit yourself personally, don't think you can get business credit to start a business or get your business cranked up or get the equipment or the resources that you need, you can. So go to Get Business Credit. It's right here on YouTube. And no, this was not a planned sponsorship, but if Scott's going to support me here, certainly I'm going to let you know that you can go right here on YouTube. Again, small business people, business owners, Get Business Credit with Scott, or with Josh. I'm sorry, I'm looking at with Josh there at Get Business Credit. All right. And the latest before I open up the phone lines, super sticker coming in from Josh. Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that so much. Yep. Give me a call or, of course, email me anytime. All right, let's open up the phone lines. And we will take it from there. Again, the topic of the night is the big talk of the week in college football concerns the changes within each conference, reformatting the conferences, restructuring the conferences, doing away with divisions. The NCAA now is not requiring conferences with 12 plus teams to split into divisions. And then how should that lineup look like? What should that look like? Should the divisions go away? Should they stay? Should they be realigned and reworked in any given conference? And what should the scheduling be? And as you guys know, I always have opinion when it comes to conferences, conference alignment, and scheduling. Always. All right. We are lined up here with the call-in system here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. 860-499-3332. I will post that number to the screen as soon as I possibly can. Before I do, check out the ticker below. It says Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Search Mark Rogers TV. Somebody sent me something in about an hour ago. I appreciate that so much for our Ohio State content. All right. So the phone lines are open. Again, let's get that number to you. It will be on the ticker below, 860-499-3332. In the meantime, I will read your comments, but of course, I will only read the comments that are coming in currently. There is no going back in the chat. Good to see Porter caught up. He's here with us. And let's take our first call here at the Voice of College Football. Give me just a second to get you on the line. But we welcome you to the show. Let's get things kicked off. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
On the line.
Hello.
On the line. Hi, Mark.
Yes.
On the line. Hey, it's Scott Sheridan down here in Texas.
Well, can you do me one favor before we get going here? Can you turn down the volume in the background?
Turning it off.
Awesome.
I just turned it off. I just woke up from an afternoon nap.
Nice.
And turned on TV. Here you are.
Here I am. You never know when I'm going to pop up, but we've had this scheduled about 12 hours or more than that. We scheduled this last night, but yeah, here I am.
Well, you've got something going on here about the realignment. You're talking college football, which is the thing, down here in Texas. We're talking University of Texas football and realignment. But I guess my big question is, and NIL came up, obviously. And we're talking like, NIL, I hope it doesn't ruin college football. I'm really kind of nervous about that because it's getting to the point where these kids are coming out of high school with needing a contract. My thought is, let's let them sit in college for 2 years before NIL comes knocking on their door. I think that there has to be some stipulation like that, at least in my opinion, that before all this gets going towards it's just running amok, and it's running in a sense of anarchy, like rugby football. But anyway, Mark, hey man, I always love your show. Love always listening to you. As far as the realignment with college football, I think that should take a back burner to NIL right now. But anyway, hey, it's in the summer. Let's talk college football. So anyway, love talking to you. Love your show, brother. Bye.
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate that. Got ourselves kicked off in a good fashion there. Our caller concerned about NIL, and I get it. But I'm going to transition quickly to a comment that's being made right now by Dave. Dave has said this a number of times, and it's complete truth. Okay, we need to understand something. There are rules and there are laws. A rule would be, for example, I decide to be employed. I interview for a job, put in an application at a particular company, and they have rules. Well, as long as those rules do not violate state and federal law, then they can make whatever rules they want. And I have to abide by the rules as long as I'm at the company. But a law is a law. A law is a state law or a federal law. And yes, NIL is a law. So every time somebody comes to the table and says, hey, we need to, stop NIL completely, or stop it for a couple of years until we figure out what to do with it, or stop it for freshmen, or stop it for freshmen and sophomores until they prove themselves and play for a couple of years. Okay. Yes, the law states, and it's in line with basically what our country's all about, is that to deprive an individual of the ability to earn money is not legal. It's not consistent with our laws. So why college football players and college athletes in general should be the only people in the country that aren't able to earn a buck in any way, shape, or form that's legal, then that can't be legislated against. I don't see how it can be legislated against. Now, you can say we are starting a company, meaning, I think, and I haven't vetted this out, I'm not saying it's the airtight, perfect idea, but I think we should think about going in this direction. The 5 conferences or the 10 conferences get together, they form a league just like the NFL, and they say, well, to play in our league, you have to conform, of course, and obey and follow the guidelines, the rules within our league. And of course, they cannot go against or contradict the law of the land, to Dave's point, but they can put down certain stipulations to say your earnings are going to contribute to the good of the entire organization. So that can be stated. You know, when I worked at ESPN, there was a rule at ESPN that if you had any idea for a show, any idea for anything, an app, a show, anything, any creative type of idea, that as long as you were being employed by ESPN, it was owned by ESPN. And they could do whatever they wanted with it. And so the same thing here. And I made this suggestion the other day. And again, I'm not pretending that I vetted this out or there aren't holes in the plan, but to make sure that these athletes benefit from their celebrity status and take most of that earning power, but also contribute to the better good of the entire organization. When the Oklahoma quarterback earns $1 million in NIL money, I would say, well, you're part of our organization. You're keeping 75% of it. 25% goes into the pot and is redistributed in a fair portion to everybody else, because it's a balance between some people would like to legislate, and we hear this suggestion made all the time, that it should be distributed across the board equally. I'm not for that, but I'm also not for the winner take all for the detriment of the entire good of the organization. You can achieve both. Okay. I do read your comments that come into the channel. So I don't get to all of them, but and I certainly don't respond to most, but I do see them, and that comes to mind just because I would love to have a mailbag show on a regular basis. But to do that effectively, I need to have graphics that put up the comments, and to go through all that is what I should do. Just one of many things we should do here at the Voice of College Football. Welcome in to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Drew. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, Drew. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So it's been a while since I've called in, but I am one of the few resident Wake Forest fans that listens to your channel. So
love it.
Just to jog your memory.
That's great. It does jog my memory, so I appreciate that. But yeah, I'm rooting for the little guys. I would like to have more of them watching the show. Love that.
Definitely. Well, I wasn't really even going to get into the NIL, but I have a thought and a question for you. But the real reason I called in was because I saw the news about the ACC. It looks like they're trying to get rid of divisions. And I saw that you had a video about it. I'll be honest, I started to listen to it.
It's pretty boring
through it, so I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about your thoughts on it, but I don't know. I think from my perspective, I'm very biased because I root for a very small brand school, but I look at it as we get to play Clemson and Florida State every year. And if we get rid of divisions, we're not going to have that any longer. So obviously I don't support it, but even trying to be objective, I don't know. I just think it's kind of, in a way, trying to solve a problem and might potentially create more problems. And sometimes I wonder, and this is what I want your thought on, is it kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy? And what I mean by that is the ACC might say, well, we want to be more competitive in the grand scheme of college football, so let's try to get who has historically been the better programs to play each other. But, you know, things change. You can have a year, 20, 15, 10 years ago, everyone would have said Miami and Florida State. But in the last 5 years or so, they haven't really been any good. And then you get a school like NC State. So I don't know. I worry if it's almost just trying to do a little bit too much. And then the other point I've heard people say is, well, benefit is you get to play everyone within 2 years. And I think that's certainly cool, but just looking at the schedules and the way it works, it's my understanding that there's you play 9 ACC opponents every year regardless. So you would be one off, but if the goal is really just to say we want all ACC teams to play each other within 2 years, you could have that under the current system, minus one person would be left out every 2 years. But I don't know. I just kind of wanted your global thoughts on what the ACC is proposing.
I don't think their proposal is bad. I don't think it's going to be a detriment to the conference in any way. So I'm not bashing it. I would just like to approach it differently. So I'm curious to start off with your opening comments. You said that obviously you want to see Clemson and Florida State every year as a Wake Forest fan. Now, I would guess that there are Wake Forest fans that would say, I don't want to see Clemson and Florida State.
I think that's actually probably fair. I guess it kind of is like, depending on how you look at it, I would rather get beat up a lot more, but then have years like last year where, if you run the table, you will be a legitimate contender. So I don't know. I guess some of it, I think you make a good point. It could come down to optimism, but I'm willing to put up with a lot more 7-5, 6-6 years for that 1 year where we can go 11-1 or 12-0 and actually maybe make the playoff or something crazy like that. I just worry it's going to turn into, even if Wake has one of those quote unquote special years, you'll just have not you personally, but everyone will have the fodder to say, well, they didn't play anyone. And I mean, if we're not playing Clemson, if we're not playing Florida State, then I mean that alone will probably ring truer than it already does. I guess would be my issue with it. Or maybe I'm just too pie in the sky with expectations.
So my initial thought is that I believe that these conferences are aiming for a few things. They certainly want to put themselves in the best position for the playoffs, both for their conference champion to be the best team. So if you get away from divisions, you get away from the concern that your best team is going to play your fourth best team, and the fourth best team is going to play lights out that night and win the conference championship and go to the playoff, and you're going to be represented by not necessarily your best team. Also, just ensuring that the two best teams are in the conference championship game. Beyond that, still maintaining a schedule that's favorable to the better teams in a sense, so that if this playoff is expanded to 8 and especially 12, that you have a chance as a conference to get in more than 2 teams, to get in 3, or if you're the SEC, it might be 4 teams into a playoff. So there's a balance between not beating up your best teams and weighing them down with too difficult of schedules, but still you want your overall conference schedule to be attractive. You want the best teams on the field together because they draw the best TV ratings and make the most money for the conference. So there's a balance there. So you're aware that each school is going to have a what do we want to call them? Designated rivals. I haven't heard another term for it, but there are going to be 3 teams.
Yes, my understanding, every year there'll be 3. Correct. Sorry to interrupt. Go
Well,
ahead.
there's going to be 3 all the time. It's the same 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all the time. So I don't see the point. Now the math works because then that leaves over 10 teams, and then you can take a rotation of 5 and 5. So if for Wake Forest, let's say it becomes, who are the 3 closest rivals? I would guess that they are Duke, North Carolina, and NC State.
See, that's the thing. That's what I'd say, but I just worry because we're a smaller brand and other schools in North Carolina might. I mean, to me, that's the 3 that makes the most sense. But yeah, I guess those would be our rivals.
So then the other 5, let's say the other 10, I should say, in the conference are split 5 and 5. And so you see 5 every other year, and you see the other 5 every other year. Okay, what I don't like about that is, take Virginia Tech, take a number of teams. They have 1 rival, maybe 2. Like the second and third teams are just arbitrary teams that are going to be connected to that team for no reason. And I don't see reason for that. I would just protect the rivalries. Yeah. That's all I would do. Protect the rivalries and then build a schedule that's a composite 500 schedule for everyone. I don't like the inequity of the scheduling. I want to fix that. I don't think certain teams should have really difficult schedules and other teams have light schedules. They play in the same conference. Build the same schedule for everyone. Build based on the previous year's standings, build a 500 schedule for everyone. It can be done.
And that makes sense to me. Like I said, I honestly got off work. I just kind of seen this news now. I haven't really thought too deeply about it, but that was just kind of my first reaction. But to your point, I guess my only concern was I wouldn't want, to your point, heavy or light. I wouldn't just want a world where Wake always gets a super light schedule and never gets an opportunity. But like you said, there is a way to do it where you build that 500 schedule. And if that's the case, I don't know. I guess I'll have to think about it more, but I think it could be good. I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent. Like I said, I need to think more about it. But if you don't mind, I'll make one comment about NIL and then
Sure.
I can let you go. But I don't know if you saw, there's an article in the Atlantic about what Wake is trying to do with their NIL. And I think it's kind of unique. I'm not sure how well it's going to work, but kind of wanted your thoughts on it. But it's my understanding there's one alumni who is basically starting, for lack of a better term, almost like a trust fund, essentially. And any Wake alum or Wake fan can, donate as little as, I think it's like $50 a month, or I guess in theory, the sky's the limit. And I think their idea is to keep it, quote unquote, more with like the traditions of the school and networking. What they're essentially going to do is, out of this fund, they're going to, quote unquote, pay players to attend like networking events and things like that. And it got me thinking, because Wake Forest has an undergraduate of about 5,200. So, I mean, just doing complete back of the envelope math here, say each year, 20% of the student body, which, typically speaking, graduates and gets pretty high paying jobs. If they're, say, I'll donate $80, $83 a month to this Wake Forest football fund, that winds up being $1,000 a year. Like I said, if you get 20% of the class to do that, that's $1 million. And that's just from one class. And obviously you can play with the numbers, but I guess my point is, it's in a way, it's almost like crowdsourcing or crowdfunding NIL. And I just thought that was, I don't know if it's good or bad, but it's definitely unique, because I think a lot of times we think of NIL in the context of, what if you just have one really rich donor? But what if something happens more, and I don't know if Wake can pull it off, but what if it's just, you don't have necessarily one huge donor, but you just have a lot of, relatively upper middle class people who might be willing to throw 500 or $1,000 because they like to see their college football team do well. And like I said, you do that a couple thousand times over and it starts to really add up. So I'll let you go, but just kind of wanted your thoughts on that.
Well, I appreciate the phone call. So you're getting off the line, or you want to continue the conversation?
Fergus, I won't speak anymore. I'll hear what you have to say and then I'll hang up.
Yeah. So that's a way to attack it, of course. Somebody's going to lose the games. So the reason I bring that up is if you are dependent on crowdsourcing for much of this, then you better deliver a winning product or people are going to be disgruntled, just like large donors could become disgruntled if they don't see their millions paying off into whatever their expectations are for wins and championships. The same thing could happen with a volume of people seeing 4 and 8 football teams and thinking, okay, we're wasting $1,000 a year. But I think it's one way to attack it, and certainly it's see, the numbers game works against Wake Forest on both ends. There is less likelihood of having big time donors because the pool is smaller, but then there's also less people to draw from if we're talking about small amounts from a large number of people because of the size of the school in each particular class. So if you take that same formula and you apply it to an enormous school, Texas, Ohio State, UCLA, then they could do the same thing and they could create 10 times as much money theoretically. But it's in this day and age with everything fair game. Of course, it's to try to bring in the best players or competent players, capable players, then anything's worth it. Sure. Well, I appreciate the call.
Right, cool. Thanks, Mark. Talk to you later. Bye.
Appreciate our Wake fan, Drew, one of a few out there. And of course, the Demon Deacons. Hey, if they keep this up, 7-1 in the ACC, almost won the championship, made it to the title game. They keep this up, they won't be able to say, hey, we're one of the little guys. Shoot, they beat up on Florida State again last year. All right, next up on the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hello, RKZ. How you doing? What?
I'm doing well.
Hello?
Hello.
I'm doing well. Yeah, I can hear you. I just got a question. What's your thoughts on Florida competing for the SEC East?
Who competing for the East?
Florida.
Well,
I'm a diehard Gators fan.
Yeah, you're a big Gators fan. Competing for the East this year. Well,
Yes, sir.
you know who's in the East. So, of course, they lost more talent than any team in the country, but they've also recruited and signed more talent than just about anybody in the country the past few years. So, I think that a positive season for Florida football would be 5-3 in the SEC and 8-4, 9-3 overall. What you got? Utah and you've got Florida State on both ends of the schedule. But I think that Anthony Richardson needs to stay healthy for the entire season. That's huge, and show that he can develop into a top flight quarterback. Right now, he's more athlete than quarterback. And, if either one of these 5-star running backs, whether that be Lingard or Bowman, or hopefully both of them fulfill their expectations, then that's you've got a potentially a remarkable duo there. But you're still have quite a ways to go to get to Georgia. Kentucky's still in the way, Tennessee's still in the way. Now South Carolina's in the way. And I would put you on that tier with those teams right now.
Okay. Well, I was just wondering because I've been talking to my Georgia friends. They always say that it's gonna take us years to get back to where we need to be. And I don't think it's gonna take long. You know, Willie Nathan's doing an outstanding job, and I just think that he just needed. I think this season is like critical if he gets off to the right start against Utah.
Yeah. Unlike most teams across the country, we're going to know a lot more about Florida after 1 week than we do most teams because, yeah, this Utah team is serious.
Right. And I also have a question about how do you feel about Tennessee's chances of upsetting Georgia and winning the East this year?
Well, I love what Tennessee's doing on offense. I love what Josh Heupel's doing overall. I believe in Hendon Hooker. I think I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the nation. 31 touchdowns, 3 picks, ran for over 600 yards. And they run an offense that gives defenses fits because of the combination of the tempo and the power running game. People think it's a pass happy offense, and it's not. It's heavy on the run. I would feel better if Tyon Evans would have chosen to stay, but they have no real issues on offense. It's more about the defense. It's going to be a couple of years before they can supplement that defense. They had a nice recruiting class on that side of the ball, but we can't expect those guys to be a force yet. So I think Tennessee's going to continue to struggle to stop people. And yeah, I get it that Georgia's lost a lot, but they still have so much coming back. You know, they have 3 of the best, probably 10 tight ends in the country still on the team. And between Milton and McIntosh at running back, they're still stocked there. The offensive line is the best in the division. They've recruited out of their minds, even at wide receiver. They've got a veteran quarterback back. And even despite all the losses on defense, you know, they still have, you know, guys that will be top 10 picks next season. In the draft. I don't think the gap is shrinking. If anything, it's widening still.
All right. Thank you for having me on.
Well, I appreciate the call. You have a good night.
Yes, sir.
Good to hear from the Gators right there. And yeah, that's going to be a heck of a game. If I could only watch one game in week 1, that's going to be high on the list. Uncle Rico, please try and get Josh Pate on your show, which he's been on a couple times. He's 100% anti-playoff expansion. See, yeah, I guess I'm 100% playoff expansion, so that would be a good match. I was thinking there for a second, I was more like 98% playoff expansion, pro playoff expansion, but it's 100% for me. And Uncle Rico is constantly, this is his pursuit in life, constantly trying to get him to actually debate someone about it. Well, I'd be the guy to debate. So I will reach out to Josh, and hopefully he has time to come on the show and we can match up arguments on the playoff expansion. Yeah, we need playoff expansion. And the arguments against it are easy to see. I get them. It's not that I don't understand them, but they're based on team performance. They're like, it's not my responsibility to make teams good. It's not my responsibility to say Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State, Texas A&M, Florida, get with it. You gotta catch Georgia and Alabama. That's not my responsibility in building what is a fair and what would be the best playoff system for the sport. But Uncle Rico, thank you. I will reach out to Josh, and hopefully we can get Josh Pate back on here. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
To the man that gives college football its voice, the great Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, David. How are you?
Excellent. I wanted to say, I didn't get a chance to comment. I really enjoyed your draft coverage that you had on the NFL draft. I actually follow the draft kind of closely. I know you don't follow it as closely as you used to, right?
I don't. I would like to, but I really don't see. Just don't have the time for it, and it doesn't. I like to watch the combine. I guess I'm
Right.
lazy is when it comes right down to it. I like to watch things, but so I love to watch the combine and I love to watch the draft. But getting into all this speculation in between has never been something I've been interested in.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I actually do follow the draft, although because you're doing college football, Mark, although I'm probably as much, I would say a slightly bigger NFL fan than I am a college fan, although it's very close. I don't like any team as much as I like the Buckeyes, but I think as a whole, I like watching the NFL more than I like watching college football. I'll say that much. But because, the games are just closer. Football's played at a higher level. The NFL is basically a 7-point league. You can't say that about college football. So, the games are, far more, competitive and entertaining that way. So, but I have to comment with Georgia, breaking the record for, I believe, most players drafted, right? 15?
Yes. In the modern era, 7 rounds. Yes.
That's right. Yeah, unbelievable. Five defensive players drafted in the first draft, and then Dean, the linebacker, goes in the second, right?
Yeah, it's really ridiculous when you just let that sink in.
Yeah. And just think that defense, I heard your guy from Irish Breakdown mention that, if Jameson Williams doesn't get hurt, we just wonder if that game goes totally different, though. I know Alabama fans are still talking about it, but, it would have been interesting. That's for sure. I will say they broke, what was it, 2020 LSU and I believe 04 Ohio State.
And I believe 16 Ohio State was in there as well, correct? I might be wrong.
So I had heard it was 04, the year after the national champion. Because remember, Ohio State had a bunch of returning starters in 03.
I know it's 04,
right?
But I thought the 16 team, maybe they didn't quite get there. I thought the 16 draft
team did have. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I thought the 16 draft matched it. Maybe not.
I don't know how many they had drafted. I do remember they had 5 first-round draft picks in that draft, which is still pretty impressive. So, I wanted to get to another topic. I got a chance to begrudgingly see Mr. Chris Farley, Steve Base's Michigan podcast, and I saw that title, by the way. By the way, Mark, you have to start choosing your friends a little bit wisely here. I don't like this crowd you're running with nowadays there, Mr. Rogers, but I digress.
You especially have complained about that and don't like the crowd I'm running with now based on the result from last November. Seems to be hitting you a little bit different than it used to.
Well, what can I say? I'm an Ohio State fan, Mark. How am I supposed to feel about it? In any case, he is of the belief, and I didn't get a chance to listen to the whole podcast. You're going to have to help me out a little bit. Michigan has a more talented roster than Ohio State. And he justifies this how?
I argued. I don't get it because I agree with what he's doing. So you understand the premise of his rankings are he is measuring the amount of talent on the team. So if you are a 5-star and you don't do anything, nothing, you're a bust for your first 3 years, you're going into your senior season, he is still ranking you as a 5-star, meaning for whatever reason, you haven't fulfilled your potential, but your potential is still that. So you are presumed to be just as talented as you were rated to be coming out of high school. You are a 5-star. Okay. Then there are other guys who were Tanner Morgan, I think a 2-star, might be a low 3-star, but he played to a certain spot. So since he is proven, JJ Watt would be a classic example, proves to be a 4-star or a 5-star. Well, then he elevates them because they have proven not to be the person we thought they were, the player we thought they were coming out of high school. So it's a measurement of how much proven or evaluated talent is on the roster. And
so go ahead.
Just to finish my point, I told him, Steve, I agree with what you're doing in regards to it makes sense. It's an interesting ranking. I think it's legitimate. I think there's flaws in everything. You can't build a system that, every time I build something like that, I'm very transparent to say this is an issue and that's an issue with it and so forth and so on. And I would love to be able to chart this and chart that. Same thing with his. But I said, Steve, I believe Michigan, if I remember the point totals, had 313 points and Ohio State 308. I said, I cannot in any way fathom how Ohio State had a more talented team than Michigan last season, regardless of the game. We're just talking about talent. Michigan lost, and forget their original ratings again, because it's more about because they established themselves as star players. It's about who they were in college. They lost a 1,300 or 1,400 yard back. They lost two defensive ends that were the two best players on the team, along with their star safety. And they lost their best offensive lineman. They lost all these guys. And Ohio State, sure, they lost talent, high-end talent as well, but also what is being put into this current ranking is the 2022 class. And Ohio State signed, in addition to the offensive talent, I was strictly looking at defense, 2 5-star defenders and 8 top 25 players at their positions, all high-end 4-stars. I don't see how that, and I'll just make one other point, and you may have heard me say this at some point, because it's easy to spit out. For example, Ohio State had the number 4 recruiting class in 2022, and Michigan was at number 8. But to put that in real terms, because that doesn't seem like a big deal between 4 and 8.
Yes.
The gap between 4 and 8 is the same as between 8 and 23.
Right. Well, I was going to take this a few different directions. Number one, and I believe I posted this in the chat on Buckeye Talk, and I don't know if you broached this subject with him, I said, bottom line, not all 4-star recruits are created equal, Mark. I mean, does he put any credence into a fact that a 4-star gets ranked somewhere, maybe in the top 200, 300, whatever it is, versus a lower-end 4-star that might be outside of the top 200 or 300 or what have you? Just maybe looking at the overall player ranking and recruiting.
Yeah, that's a good point. So I don't know if he accounts for that or not. I don't know if there's a difference between so 5 stars. There's a difference. You can be the number 1 player in the country, and you can be number 35. But it's so minuscule. There are only 35, roughly 35 of them each season. To your point, yes, 4 stars kick in about number 35. And it goes well past top 300. If you go to any of the top 300 lists and go to number 300, he's a 4-star. And it continues quite a ways after that. You're talking top 400, 450 players or 4 stars. And
because I mean,
I think it's a good point that you're making about the 4 stars. And you could say the same thing about the 3 stars, but I think your best point, yes, is hitting this fairly large disparity in 4-star rankings.
Right, because another way you could pose it is some people use like the ESPN top 300, and just you could look at it in those terms, 2 players ranked within that top 300. Not to say that your former employer's rankings are always right or wrong, because I know Rivals and Rivals and the other recruiting service 24/7. Do things, differently, as far as rankings goes. But yeah, I mean, that would be a point that I would make. The other point that I would make and I think Tony had made this point on the podcast. I mean, if you just go positionally and you look at where Ohio State is better than Michigan at, Ohio State's got a better quarterback coming into the year. Ohio State has a better wide receiver core coming into the year. I believe Ohio State, with the loss of Haskins being gone and the amount of running backs Ohio State has coming back, is going to have better running backs coming into the season. So, I mean, was he also looking at it from that perspective as well?
I can't answer that.
Okay. Because, I mean, I would, you could also just look at it from the perspective of, positionally, where, Ohio State is overall better position to position to position. And one would think that has to be taken into account when evaluating talent, wouldn't you, Mark?
Yeah, I would agree with that. It sounds like you need to take this up with one Steve Days. I'm just the go-between.
Well, okay. Well, if he'll give me 5 to 10 minutes on his podcast, which I don't know if it'll be happening anytime soon, I would certainly love to chew the fat with him on this. But that's a different discussion for a different day, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I just was curious. I saw the title. I know that you were on there and you discussed it with him. So, I just was curious to see where he was coming from on that. So, hey, I wanted to throw out another pod. Are you with a guest this year? Can I one other thing on that, Mark? Are you going to have Phil Steele back this year?
Yeah. So actually, Phil said after we had him on, I don't know when that was. I guess we haven't had him on this since we had him on twice. We had him on twice last summer. Yeah, I guess it's about that time. Once he wraps up his latest edition, he's kind of cuts loose on the circuit. So yeah, we should get after that. Absolutely, would like to. Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering if you're going to have him closer to when the season starts. Still, in my view, that's the best college football preview out there, bar none. So
it
it'd be
is
interesting to see if you can get him at that time.
If you're just into information, which I am, and I believe you are, he brilliantly came up with a way to pack more information per square inch into those pages than is conceivable. It's truly a work of art.
Nice. You'd have Steve Merrill back for his picks, by the way, Mark, or is that?
Oh, absolutely. Would love to have Steve back. Absolutely, and I'll do a better job of tracking those. Which they're obviously easy to track. You just watch them and add them up from there. But yeah, I should do that from week to week. Is track his accuracy and report that. You know what? I'm sorry, Dave, to be rambling, but I was cleaning out the garage a couple of days ago, and I'm the guy that for decades and decades kept, every sporting news, every Sports Illustrated, all of that business. Well, it's getting purged. I was taking trip after trip after trip after trip to the dumpster, dumping all that stuff. So I did find, because I thought I had lost my prediction record going back decades, but I came across it. To me, that was like gold. I know nobody else cares, but I was able to come up with my NFL and college football prediction record going back to 1979.
Wow. So that's a long time there, Mark. By the way, I just want to say I've had a little bit better luck, financially here with Mark Rogers' picks as compared to Steve Merrill's picks, just as a small sample size. I want to say that in full disclosure here, you've helped me pay the rent a few times here, Mark. So
well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Dave. Please don't count on me too much. Understand now, Steve's a pro. Understand that he's just giving us a small little slice, and for whomever would jump on his platform would get the full array of everything that he has there, including like a system of how much should go toward various selections. So it's not just a cut and dry prediction record. Whereas I shouldn't say I'm a rookie at this point. I've been doing it forever, but I'm the amateur. I am the amateur that just I don't have any kind of formula. The only thing that I've picked up on a number of things, and the first one that comes to mind, Dave, and you've probably heard me say this, is it amazes me that if you take the top 25 each week, and so that's typically 20 to 22 games because a few of them play each other, that
Right.
out of those 20 or 22 games, it's almost clockwork that 20 to 25% of those games are going to be upsets, are going to be straight money line upsets. So you need to find those 4 or 5 maybe that are going to be upsets at almost every week.
Yeah, I used to have a little bit of luck finding kind of the hot team to ride there for a few weeks. I don't know. I would pick up on a team that, seemed to be kind of, running hot and was, covering there for a few weeks in a row. And then, I just, tried to find other lines that just seemed, kind of out of whack, was usually kind of my philosophy in the past.
The other thing that I should probably start back up, because I was really successful at this for about 4 to 5 years, is I had confidence picks because, as you well know from looking at the games yourself, there are certain games that jump out as, okay, I really love that line. I love where this is going. I feel confident here, versus some of them are just like, shoot, I got to make a pick. I'm going to deliver all the top 25 games, but I don't know. So I kept my confidence record for a few years, and it was well in the close to 70% range against the spread. So I've got to try that again this year.
All right. Well, as always, I'll be watching, Mark. You take care of yourself. As always, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure for me as well. Thank you. Have a good night. It's our guy, Dave, big Buckeyes fan, likes to talk the lines as well. And once he gets me started on that, forget it. All right, let's keep it going here at the Voice of College Football. Again, the topic of the night, we don't have to talk about it, but just putting it out there because it's the talk of the week in college football, is the reformatting, restructuring of the conferences and possible elimination of division play. All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
It's Bash.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Who's on the line?
It's Bash.
Bash. How you doing?
Yep.
You're starting to show up these
Good,
days
how
now.
about you?
I'm doing well.
I'm less busy nowadays, especially in the evenings. I was busy in the evenings, and it's looking like I'm going to be super busy in the mornings moving forward. So good news for me being able to follow Mark Rogers.
Well, it's good to hear from you. Glad that things are settling down for you.
Yeah, it's a relief. Anyway, I have a little bit of a proposal on how I think it should go from here on out with the No Division. I am a huge fan of No Division. You ready to hear my schedule breakdown of
Absolutely.
what I think every single conference should do?
I want to hear the way we should do this. Yep.
And point by point, I want you to kind of, challenge me on it if you do not like a part of it.
Oh, that's why I'm here.
We'll start here. No divisions, of course, just like, it's starting to look like we're getting towards. You play 11 regular season games, okay? 8 conference, 3 out of conference. For now, we could just say that the out-of-conference games are decided the same way that they are, just scheduled by the schools. 8 conference games are just kind of, you have like 3 constants and then 5 rotating. You play 5 teams home and home and then move to another 5 home and home kind of thing. That way you're being able to see everybody every couple of years, and you're seeing them multiple times through a couple of years, and you get your rivals too. So, like, for example, with Ohio State, like, let's say they put Michigan, Penn State, and Illinois as the constants, and then they have just 5 rotating
games through the rest of the conference, and it's home and home. So whatever schedule they have, one year, it's going to carry over like 2 or 3 games into the next year in the opposite direction. But I say 11 because I think there should be a conference semifinal if you get rid of division. Because you don't want to have that debate from 2 or 3. You're a lot more comfortable with that debate between 4 and 5 than 2 and 3, right? So then you have a mini playoff where the top 2 seeds host the semifinal games, and the rest of the 5 through however many you have. So I use the Big Ten. They got 5 through 14. They all play each other in those conference games. They, where they're at, try to keep it even, 5 versus 6, 7 versus 8, down the line. And then you have your championship weekend still. And then we do the 12-team format that they propose, where the top 4 seeds are the top 4 conference champs, top 6 conference champs, auto bid, and then the top 6 kind of at-large bids also get in.
All right, let's back up on this one. I want to make sure this is straight. Everybody plays an 11-game regular season, 8 in conference, 3 out of conference. Okay. First issue is that for 90% of the country, you are eliminating a game. You are eliminating a payday. You are eliminating a full stadium, half full stadium.
No, I'm not.
Okay. What did I miss?
I'm not, because that final week with the semifinal, that same week, the rest of the conference does play.
Okay, I got you.
Play basically, so you
much like the COVID
4,
year,
2 versus 3. I mean, yeah, except they didn't have like conference semifinal games.
Okay, so I got you. Because I actually thought that was kind of cool the year that in 2020, because the Pac-12 did it or said they were going to do it. I forget what happened with the Pac-12 that year. Everything they did was inconsequential. But anyway, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten basically said the last weekend, in addition to the conference championship game, we're going to have other games, and everybody else is going to slot into their position, and we're going to match them off and play more football that weekend. And I thought it was kind of cool. In addition to the conference championship games, there being other games within the conference. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing.
So basically the conference champion would play 13 games, and the conference runner-up would still play 13. You just have the top 4 get into this little like playoff within a conference. It's a mini conference tournament. The top 4 get in week 13, so everybody gets through 1 bye. Week 13, you play those semifinal games. 1 hosts 4, 2 hosts 3, and then 5 and 6 play, 7 and 8 play, 9 and 10 play, and down the line like that same week. So everybody still does play. Now somebody may lose a home game because of how they perform, or if you do 5 versus 14 down that line, so that way you can reward basically the top half of the league with a home game minus the 4 conference, or minus the 4 teams in the tournament, because that would work out a little bit differently. So like the ACC got rid of divisions. Number 1 would have been Notre Dame that year. Number 4 would have been North Carolina. Notre Dame would have hosted North Carolina. And then Clemson would have hosted Miami in that COVID year, for example, in week 13 in quotation. Do you get what I'm saying? Or you?
I get the whole format. I understand it. I'm trying to process as to whether I like it or not. I like the novelty of us not knowing who's playing the last weekend of the season. I do kind of think that's cool. And while everybody's focused on the championship games, and for you, a playoff of sorts within the conference, I do like, I'm a nerd in that I am almost as interested in the 5, 6, 7, 8 games and seeing, okay, Indiana's playing Maryland and Penn State's going to play Purdue. And that's almost as interesting to me as the conference championship. But I'm a little bit lost on it. I can't really put my finger on it. It just seems like too much. Like, why do we have to have 4 teams competing for a conference championship? They just played a full season of 8 games. Why did they have to go then to this little mini tournament to determine the conference champion?
Because if you get rid of divisions, then you could set yourself up for a situation where that second and third place team didn't play each other, or, like, especially when you're talking about a possible 16-team league, maybe playing 8 or 9 conference games, you could be looking at Texas, Alabama, and Florida as the top 3 teams, and none of them played one another. But then you're going to, and they have the same record or something. It's to prevent more of a mess, because if you would have taken the Big Ten this past year, right? The Big Ten this past year, Michigan and Ohio State were the top 2 teams, but the next 2 teams were Iowa and Michigan State. Now, all of them had 7 or more conference wins, right? And all of them had 10 plus wins as well on the regular season. Well, the next highest team would have been a Wisconsin team who was 9-3, didn't hit double digits in wins. And then after Wisconsin, it also would have been Minnesota, who actually did beat Wisconsin, but there was a 3-way tie there between Purdue, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So basically, when you're talking about, though,
you sold me. This is the reason you sold me. So not to cut you off, Bash, but I think people might be getting lost with all these examples. The main point in this is that you have teams 1 through 14, and you have 1 through 4, and we're focused on those 1 through 4. And if we only did 1 and 2, and that's what's being proposed and probably going to end up being the deal in all these conferences, 1 playing 2, there is a high likelihood, I believe this is your point, and I agree with it, there's a strong likelihood that seed number 2 and seed number 3 will have the same conference record, and they will not have played each other. And sure, there's going to be a tiebreaker system to determine which one goes, but that tiebreaker system is going to be kind of flimsy, because Michigan State could be 7-2 and Iowa could be 7-2, and they didn't play each other, and whatever, there's going to be this common opponents and all this other business that really doesn't, to me, distinguish who's the better team. So I kind of like that. For as much as I didn't think I was going to like this little play-off system within a conference, that makes sense.
Yeah, and like you use the ACC, for example, from 2022, and you look at it, if North Carolina, remember how they lost, they nearly came back and won, but they lost to Florida State that year in 2020. And it was kind of just like an upset because they were in the top 10 flying high at that moment, right? Let's say they don't lose that game and they have 2 conference losses against Virginia and Notre Dame. And Clemson has 1 conference loss only against Notre Dame, and North Carolina would have never got that shot against Clemson too. That would have kind of, as a fan, that would have kind of not sat super well with me. And you could say, well, North Carolina shouldn't have lost 2 games. That's more reasonable. But you take away both Virginia and Florida State, then you're talking about, undefeated Notre Dame and then a 1-loss Clemson and a 1-loss North Carolina, and whatever the heck the tiebreaker would be. How do you exactly keep out 2 1-loss teams from contention for a conference championship? Like 2016 Big Ten too with Ohio State.
Sure. So, Bash, unless I'm missing something, unless college football commissioners and the people that they rely on are more forward thinking than I think, I don't think this is going to happen. But
I don't either.
What you're playing out is going to happen. This is going to, the issue that you're bringing up, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. And probably most seasons, it's going to happen at least once, if not twice, among the 5 major conferences, where there's going to be a number 2 versus a number 3. And we're going to be like, they're both 7-2 in the conference and they didn't play each other. So we're going to have some hokey common opponents, and that's really not going to, that doesn't prove anything. The reason common opponents works, and actually why divisions work, is when there's a tie for a division champion, or a 3-way tie for a division championship. Obviously, if there's a 2-way tie, you're all set because everybody plays within the division. But if there's a 3-way tie, that at least makes sense because they're all playing the same teams. So there's a like comparison against them.
And if you're not a fan of these Big Ten West versus Big Ten East, this SEC East versus SEC West thing, the solution isn't necessarily to get rid of divisions, it's to equalize those divisions, right? And not just equalize it with leaders versus legends. It's change it up every single year, right? Based on how they performed in the previous year. That would make a little bit more sense than just throwing out all divisions and keeping the same format. Because again, we were really close to that possible conflict happening between North Carolina and Clemson back in 2020. And that was the only example we have of it in a non-round robin setting. The only example. So that's why it kind of doesn't rub me the right way,
Okay. Good stuff. I like it. I can't pick that apart except for it. Yeah, I can't even explain it just in regards to just kind of the setup of having a bracket within a conference for just to determine a conference champion. But yeah, if everybody else is playing and it becomes almost like a regular season weekend with everybody else playing and they don't lose that game and don't lose the gate from the game.
Sorry to cut you off here. Those semifinal games are also going to be awesome because this is not going to be common. It might happen in the SEC occasionally. It is not going to be super common where somebody who's not playing in one of those two games are going to be able to make the playoff. That might also be a play-in game for the playoff too, if it's a 12-team playoff. When you're talking about 6 at-large.
Yeah. So real quick before I let you go, what would we have had this past season? We would have had in the Big Ten, Michigan, Iowa, and then Ohio State and Michigan State?
Yeah.
In the ACC, I guess we would have had, who knows, between Wake and Pitt. They were both 7-1, but we'll just pick one. Pitt, the 1 seed, and I guess maybe NC State would have been the 4, and then Wake and Clemson would have played. And then we would have had Georgia the 1, Alabama the 2. Then I guess it would have been maybe Ole Miss and Kentucky. So we would have had a Georgia-Kentucky game and Alabama-Ole Miss in the semifinals. And then in the Big 12, we would have had. Regardless, I'm not setting it up exactly the way it would have gone, but something close. The Big 12 would have been Oklahoma State, Baylor would have been the top 2 seeds, and then we would have had Oklahoma, and we might have had to stretch after that. I'm trying to think who had a decent year. Who else would have been up there?
Probably Iowa State.
Who?
If not Kansas State, probably Iowa State as the 4 seed. If not, Kansas State would have been last year.
Yeah,
those two went.
It would have been a weak 4 seed.
I think both of them went 7-5. Yeah.
Yeah, they both did go 7-5. So they went probably 4-5 and 4 in the Big 12. So anyway, you would have had probably an Oklahoma State, Iowa State game, and then a Baylor, Oklahoma game. And then out to the West Coast, we would have had Utah, the 1, Oregon, the 2, and then probably slotting in something like UCLA. And it was a mess out there. I'm trying to think what the records were, but a couple 6-3, 5-4 teams as the 3 and 4 seeds. Regardless,
it would be Washington State as the 4 seed, I think.
Yep. All right, Bash. Well, I appreciate it. It makes a whole lot of sense, and I'm not coming up with too many issues with it.
All right, cool. Well, glad to get your feedback, and have a great one. I'll be in the chat. So
appreciate it, Bash. Have a good night. All right. Next up on the Voice of College Football, who's on the line? Hello? Hello? Once, twice? Anybody on the line? Okay, we'll keep it moving. Hopefully we didn't miss anybody there of consequence, but we will keep it going with our next caller. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Chris, how are you?
Chris, I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, fine. I was just kind of listening to and my opinions are just opinions, Mark. So if people don't, if they don't like my opinion, then that's fine. I don't.
They're opinions for all of us. We all just have our opinions.
Okay.
Yeah. Some are more. I think on one hand you could argue that they're all the same. They're all worth the same amount, but on the other hand, some are obviously more valid than others, depending on their knowledge base. But regardless, go to it.
Anyway, I was kind of just thinking to myself, I don't know all the things that go into, like, let's just say, for example, that I don't know what that they decided they weren't going to expand the playoffs. Is that kind of the choice that was made? That was kind of the impression I had. They're going to leave it at 4.
At
least for the time being.
the time being, yes.
Well, something I've already kind of maybe talked about it a little bit, but I'm kind of the opposite thinking in terms of representation, I guess. It's always easier, I guess, in retrospect to know maybe what the right thing might have been. So I have like an unfair advantage, I guess, in terms of being able to look backward. But like in 2014, for example, doesn't it kind of seem reasonable if they had just paired Ohio State and Oregon together? That might have been sufficient to select one team, or is that maybe too presumptive? As far as the reason I bring it up is I kind of noticed with CFP, for example, it would be a different way to go about it. But if that had been the case in that year, for example, if they had just put Ohio State and Oregon in the championship game, and I'm not saying they should have, I'm just saying if they had, then I kind of noticed that what it would have done, and you can look into it yourself to see if I'm right about it, but then the next year it would have been in the Orange Bowl, because it kind of, what it does is what they do is they have these games slotted for and they go through kind of a similar rotation. It's not the same as with the BCS, but it's kind of the same idea. And so one way to maybe have organized it would have been maybe to, instead of having 2 semifinals, and I'm not necessarily promoting this, by the way, I'm just saying this is one thing that might have happened, I guess, if they'd have chosen to do it. They could have maybe in the Orange Bowl, instead of, I think it was Oklahoma and Clemson, if they'd have known that in advance, which I know nobody could know in advance, but if they'd have known in advance that it was going to be Alabama and Clemson, then I'm just thinking they could have just put that pair together in the Orange Bowl, and then the next year it would have been the Peach Bowl. You know what I mean? When it was Alabama and Washington. If they could have known that it was going to be again, it's like looking backwards, right? So it's like I have the unfair advantage of knowing what the result was. But then, like in 2016, put Alabama and Clemson in the Peach Bowl. And then in 2017, it would have been the Sugar Bowl, which I don't know which teams would have gone to the Sugar Bowl, but that's where it would have been. And then in 2018, it would have been the Cotton Bowl. And what it does is it works its way back to the Rose. 2019, the Fiesta Bowl, obviously, between Ohio State and Clemson. And then 2020 would have been back in the Rose Bowl. It goes through like a six-year cycle. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, for people that I don't particularly like the idea of a playoff, but it doesn't necessarily mean we don't need one. But there's like another option, I guess, to maybe consider. And I don't know necessarily what, for example, like in the Rose Bowl, if they necessarily would have wanted Alabama in the Rose Bowl, but that's who ended up playing, right? It was Ohio State and Alabama. But if I'm just kind of wondering if they didn't just give one bowl, like the option to pick which 2 teams they wanted, I wonder if that wouldn't have worked out kind of fairly for everybody. Is that too far out in left field?
I got to admit, Chris, I was completely lost until the very last thing that you said, I believe, crystallized it for me. So basically, what you are saying is just, and you're not proposing this, but you're saying what would have happened had these bowls been given the preference of selecting whomever they wanted to have play in the game.
Sure. That's
Okay.
exactly what I was trying to say.
And you would give that in a rotating basis to the major bowls.
So I wouldn't be giving it. It wouldn't really be me doing it, but it would be according to BCS. Basically, it would be similar to BCS protocol, except instead of having like a poll, like I would think, for example, in 2014, I mean, and again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Rose Bowl, maybe they say we don't want Ohio State and Oregon, we want Alabama, Florida State. No, I don't know, but I'm just thinking, if you just let each bowl pick who they want, I wonder if they wouldn't have picked. I mean, it's kind of like a hypothetical. Would those bowls have picked who they picked, which wasn't what the championship game was, or would they have picked what the championship game was? Maybe not knowing in advance, but maybe just having a preference. You know what I mean? Where they might have picked the right teams without really knowing why.
Okay, so
I want to make sure.
Want to make sure that I'm understanding, and I want to make sure that everybody listening's understanding. So if we just had the New Year's Six bowls, the previous called BCS bowls, whatever you want to call them, if they selected after the conference championship games whomever they wanted to play in their bowl games, and then you set up some type of rotation as to the order in which they would select them, you're wondering how close those selections would be to the outcome that we've already seen through the playoff era of the semifinal and championship game matchups.
So basically what I'm trying to get at was if you let every bowl pick more or less who they, and put one in prioritize one bowl, kind of like you did with the BCS, but without really designating one. In other words, say, okay, for example, this year it'll be the Peach Bowl should be, well, it's going to be one of them anyway. It's going to be a semifinal, but let's just say instead of a semifinal, let's say, well, we're going to have a title game in the Peach Bowl, and then let the Peach Bowl pick the two teams that they feel like are best suited to their bowl. Really, is what I'm trying to say. It's not saying the Peach Bowl needs to make sure it's the top two teams, but let the Peach Bowl decide who's best suited to their bowl, and then let the other 5 bowls decide who's best suited to their bowl. And just let it all play out is basically kind of what I'm hinting at. And I wonder how close it wouldn't have been to what really happened anyway, is what I'm asking. And without knowing, and of course I wouldn't know.
We don't know, sure. So I'm just going to take
kind of a futile.
So we're just going to take 1 year as an example. We're going to go back to 2014. And who are you giving the first selection to?
Well, I'm not really doing it, but the Rose Bowl.
The Rose
Bowl. Not really me that's doing it, but yeah.
Sure. All right.
I mean,
I don't know whom they would have selected. To your point, they might have selected a traditional Rose Bowl matchup of the Big Ten and the Pac-12, which would have been, as to your point, the ultimate championship game. Or they may have said, you know what, we want the two biggest power brands regardless, so we're going to have Alabama and Ohio State play in this. I don't know what they would have done, but yeah.
I don't either.
All right, Chris, anything else? Any other topics you want to hit on?
No. That's it.
All right. Well, I appreciate you calling.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Bye.
While those type of exercises are somewhat interesting, depending on your perspective, I think we had kind of lost everyone on the. That's just we're going off into just complete fantasy at that point. So, Roger Dodger wondering where Jordan Addison is. Apparently, he was in Los Angeles just the other day checking things out. I don't know his whereabouts right now. All right. We will get to our next call. Let's do that here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's still Real MVP. How you doing?
I am doing just fine. You've fooled us tonight by coming in here about, I don't know, 8th or 9th in the batting order.
Hey, man, it's baseball season, so at least I made it to the field.
You did. What's on your mind?
FanDuel released odds for plenty more games. You mind if I go over with you some key games?
Okay.
Okay.
I think I've been giving you final scores before, so we'll try to do that. Okay.
Okay. Penn State is a 2.5-point favorite against Purdue.
Okay. And if you can give me the home team on these games going forward, I think that game's at Purdue.
Yeah, the second team will always be the home
Okay.
team.
All right. Here we go. Penn State, Purdue. Ooh, that's going to be a close one. Penn State 27-24.
Tennessee is a 4-point favorite against Pittsburgh.
Tennessee 31-27. I know that doesn't help our betting public, but that's what comes to mind.
Kentucky is a 4-point underdog against Florida.
Kentucky 30-23.
Alabama is a 15-point favorite against Texas.
I'll let you know what I think of that game right here pretty bluntly. Alabama 44-17.
Baylor is a 2.5-point underdog against BYU.
Baylor 23-17.
Michigan State is a 2-point favorite against Washington.
Michigan State's a 2-point favorite at Washington. Michigan State 27-17.
Penn State is a 1-point favorite against Auburn.
Auburn 26-24.
Wisconsin is a 16-point underdog against Ohio State.
Ohio State 38-24.
Texas is a 1-point favorite against Oklahoma. Neutral site game.
Yeah. Oklahoma 37-28.
Notre Dame is a 9-point underdog against BYU.
Did I hear that right? What?
Oh, 9-point favorite.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. All
favorite.
right. What I was going to have you do on these is have me guess what the point spread is. Notre Dame at BYU. Notre Dame 30-17.
You want to guess the point spread for the next game?
Sure.
Okay. USC versus Utah.
Utah 4-point favorite.
3-point underdog.
Oh, okay. All right. Utah 26-21.
LSU versus Florida.
LSU at Florida. Florida 5-point favorite.
They're only 3-point favorites.
Okay. I'm going to go LSU 23-20.
Texas versus Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State 4-point favorite.
They are a 1-point underdog.
This love affair with Texas football is insane. Okay. I tell you, I thought I was being kind on that Alabama game. I something's going to need to change, or I'm just going to shoot. I think that thing's going to just be a complete whitewash. I'll go Oklahoma State 27-21.
Ole Miss versus LSU.
LSU. Say Ole Miss 3-point favorite.
LSU's 2.5 point favorite.
Okay. I'm going to go with Ole Miss 34-31.
Final game I'll give you for tonight, Texas A&M versus Alabama.
It's at Alabama. I'll say Alabama -11.
-16.
Okay. I'm going to go, that's a tough call. I'm going to say Alabama 37-23.
All of those were at FanDuel, by the way. That's where I got my odds from.
Okay.
The final thing I'll ask you for tonight, Mark, is there is an unordinary amount of hype for quarterback Will Levis. What do you think about the hype?
I think it's just that. I think he's a really good player, but it's not substantiated. I don't get it. Again, I don't know where that's coming from exactly, unless somebody's just wanting to throw some bait out there to see what people think and to see if they can reel in some easy money for Vegas. I don't know. He's a really good player. And he's only had one starting season, so maybe he takes another leap. It's not like he was Bryce Young coming out of high school to where people were expecting anything superhuman from him. So I think he's, well, I guess when I state this, I'm going to have to be consistent with my top 20 college football, my quarterback rankings, whatever I ranked him, I don't know, 12 or 13 in the country, whatever it was. That's about what he is. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a top 15 quarterback in the country, but Heisman odds, it's worth a shot if you get some really good odds, but I don't think he's going to be in that discussion.
Well, what do you think about the NFL draft projections for next year as well?
Well, I would love to hear. I would love to hear some of those.
I'm looking at one.
Some of those analysts back up their current projection.
Well, do you know what CBS has them from 3 days ago?
Well, I think you let me know this, or you posted this somewhere. I saw it number 1.
Exactly.
Yeah,
listen, I don't understand. These teams just need to step up. Clearly, Kentucky's just on a whole nother level, Mark. So, Ohio State, Alabama, what have they done compared to Kentucky, other than literally miles ahead of them?
Well, this is your team, and this is your guy. This you're the first guy that should be all into this coming true.
Well, listen, I can hope for something to be true, but I can also have the common sense knowledge to realize that Will Levis is not as good as C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young.
Yeah, it took me by surprise. I did not think that he was getting that kind of love. You know, it's one thing to be a Heisman candidate. There's a lot that goes into that that's not necessarily football related. You know, it's about how good's the team and just a lot of perception versus an NFL draft, a franchise putting their money and their reputation and jobs on the line to select somebody number 1 overall in the draft. Now that's a whole different deal. That's a actual legitimate scouting process of how good a player is going to be versus just a bunch of sports writers saying, yeah, Will Levis came out of nowhere and threw 32 touchdowns and ran for 15, and Kentucky was a feel-good story because they went 12-1 and almost won the SEC, and boom, Heisman Trophy winner. But you know, the scouting report and projection for an NFL number 1 position in the draft, that's a whole other deal. Well,
Mark, that's all I got for you tonight. Have a great rest of your show.
Thank you to Real MVP. Appreciate it. Have a good night. All right. We got 2 calls on the line. We'll take these 2 calls and wrap it up from there. If any mods are in the chat, please cancel this. I have tried to cancel this bot about 14 times, and I don't know why YouTube does this to me. They give me an error. I'm trying to block user. An error occurred. Try refreshing the window. Well, if I refresh the window, I kill the live stream. So we can't do that. So anyway, if anyone has mod powers, please kill this garbage that's in the chat, please. All right. Let's finish strong here on the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Michael. How you doing tonight, sir?
Michael, I'm doing well. How are you?
Not too bad. I got to say, I somewhat agree with your top 20 quarterbacks, but you kind of had me nervous when you got towards your top 5 or so, top 6. I was wondering where you could put Aiden O'Connell. This is my first question. What stops him from being in the top 5?
What are the chances he's going to be in the top 5?
No, of your top 20 quarterbacks, you have him number 6.
Yes.
What made him 6 instead of maybe being 5?
I'm just evaluating the guys. I'm just evaluating.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is that I looked over. So Michael, if you can tune me down in the background, that would be great. So,
I'm actually outside, Mark.
Oh, okay. I'm just hearing a reverb of my statements. So with Aiden O'Connell, number 1, he needs to cut down on his picks. Through 11. That's not horrible, but a little high on the interceptions. And that was one evaluation. I did go through his games as well. And I saw him play Ohio State. I saw the Michigan State game. Saw some of the Wisconsin game. Saw the bowl game start to finish. Yeah, it was more about making some mistakes. And also that he had better wide receiver cores than the couple quarterbacks I had in front of him, meaning that without David Bell and company, I got to see that he's going to be able to perform at that level without those guys.
Yeah, because they got everybody. He had Sheffield coming back. He had Brock Thompson, Milton Wright, Tracy from Iowa, Steptoe, and a couple others who's going to be all right this year. And question number 2 for you is, I wonder what made FanDuel pick Penn State to be a 2.5-point favorite at Ross State for the home opener.
Yeah, you got me on that one. I think they look at David Bell gone. They look at Karlaftis gone. And that Penn State's a brand and a team that's been more consistently good than Purdue. They certainly went to Wisconsin in week 1 last year and pulled out a win in Madison, which is a difficult thing to do.
But like I said, I still think it's going to be a good game. But I think with everything that Purdue has coming back, people's actually sleeping on Purdue this year.
Oh, I know you do. I know you love your Boilers, and for good reason. And I still don't know why Purdue was not ranked in the top 25 last year. They were ranked safely within my final top 25, but considering that schedule and finishing 9-4 and playing in a very strong, deep division, I just didn't. And playing Notre Dame and Tennessee non-conference along with Oregon State, who turned out to be a pretty good team. I don't know how anyone can justify that they didn't finish in the top 25.
Could it be because of the losses against Ohio State and Wisconsin?
No, I think it's because they're Purdue.
Yeah, it could be too, but I don't know. But anyway, have a great rest of the show. Thanks for taking my call, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Michael. And not so much when I say Purdue that it's Purdue. I don't think there's a knock against Purdue or any kind of slight on Purdue. I think it's that these voters get locked into whatever their preseason expectation and perception of these teams are, and it takes a huge lift to push past whatever their perception is. So Purdue goes through a season, they go 9-4. They beat Tennessee, Oregon State, Michigan State, Iowa, and whoever else I'm missing that's decent. Sure, they got blown out by Ohio State. So did just about everybody on their level in the Big Ten. They played really well on the road against Notre Dame. They lost a close game against Minnesota. Yeah. Look at the teams around them in the rankings and the standings, and there's no reason why Purdue should not have been a top 15 to 20 team in the country last year. That's where I placed them. But they weren't that at the beginning of the season. So again, that perception carried through. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Porter.
Hey, Porter. What's going on?
Good evening. By the way, I hope Darrell's still listening. I just want to say Kentucky is the best. ... at making bourbon. How about that? In fact, I'm going to probably partake as soon as I get off the phone with you.
There you go.
So, hey,
I like Kentucky.
get back.
There's certain programs across the country I root for just a little. I give them a little nudge, and Kentucky's one of them. Wake Forest is one of them. I don't know. They just I like that they've put up a little fight. They're playing with the big boys, and they're not expected to. They don't have the history. They got to push past some adversity. They got to push past some challenges that don't go their way in terms of recruiting and all that business. And they can play with the big boys and hold up pretty well. So I like, the TCUs and the Kentuckys and the Wake Forests of the last 10 years that have been able to do that.
Yeah, I do too. I'll be honest. I respect Kentucky. I mean, even though I don't think we've lost to them in a while, but I love to see basketball schools like North Carolina was a couple of years ago get good, and it's just good for our sport when you have teams with passionate fan bases be able to enjoy like an Orange Bowl, like what North Carolina did a couple of years ago. So, well, that's not why I called in. You talking about the changing up the divisions and the different conferences. I don't think SEC is going to change anything until Texas and Oklahoma get in. So
Sure.
I think we're kind of in a holding pattern. But if it does happen, let's just say the SEC decided to do that, I would not like it because one of the things about having not really a set schedule, but just a schedule that just kind of rotates is you really develop an affinity for places that you go every other year. I mean, I really like Knoxville, Tennessee. That's one of my favorite away places to go see a game. The people are great. The scene right there on the river is fantastic. It's just a fun environment. And I would hate to kind of disrupt that. And we've developed friends. We've made friends up there, and we see them every other year. And I don't know I feel like if you do away with traditions like that, you're just hurting the sport. And as an Ohio State guy, let me ask you, what was your favorite growing up? I guess in the traditional Big Ten, because what we have in the Big Ten right now is, I don't know what you call it. It's not traditional. But what was your favorite, I guess, away game to go to as a Buckeyes fan?
Well, I never was out traveling to games. I was just watching on TV. So I never went. I've never been to any. I've been to more SEC stadiums because I worked in the SEC for 7 years, more so than Big Ten stadiums. I've only been to Ohio Stadium, so I couldn't give you any kind of perspective on traveling in the Big Ten. So,
okay, well,
and really nothing comes to mind other than, of course, Michigan's Michigan. So you put that one aside; it's different than the rest of them. But in terms of Ohio State playing different teams in the Big Ten, I'm an Ohio guy and grew up with Big Ten football. I grew up watching everything, but the Big Ten being, nearest and dearest to my heart, that, I have there's certain memories that come to mind with all of those different schools. I can recite all sorts of different games through the years against Minnesota and Purdue and Wisconsin and everybody.
Yeah, I just feel like, I guess because the SEC did it first with going to divisions, we're just so used to having divisions, and we're so used to having these rivalries that have developed over the years. I mean, I remember a time when, let's see, Tennessee and Georgia was not a big rivalry. I remember a time when LSU and I think I would say LSU Auburn is one of those rivalries that has developed over the years because they were stuck in the same divisions that they had to play each other every year. You know, it's and now the idea of Auburn and LSU not playing in a year is just crazy to think about. So I don't know. I hate to get away from that kind of stuff, but I will say this though, and I'm not going to go into. I mean, last time I got on here and started talking about the way I would do the playoff. I mean, I know I got hammered in the comments, so I'm not going to say anything about that because I think I would lose half the people. But I am for the 12-team playoff. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think it would be great for the sport, and but I think they should shorten the season because these kids can't take the brutal a schedule like that. 16 games maybe. This isn't the NFL, so. But yeah, I there's something else I was going to ask. Oh, I know. I always call. I get a little nostalgic too. So that's part of when I call. I was thinking about when Georgia last played Ohio State. Kirk Herbstreit was the quarterback. They had some good players on that Ohio State team. Fortunately, my Dogs won the Citrus Bowl that year. I was a senior at Georgia when that happened. But Herbstreit, was he a heavily recruited quarterback? Because I don't really remember him really being that effective that day. He was decent, but really, I think Robert Smith was probably the star that day. And you guys had a linebacker. I think his name was Tovar. That was really
Steve
good
Tovar.
that day. So
yes. Yeah, that Ohio State team they were good. They weren't great. They finished 8-3-1 after that loss. That was a pretty decent game against Georgia. I think it was 21-14. Eric Zier, Garrison Hurst, and Hurst had a big day. There was a huge, I could argue that Ohio State would have probably won the game if you flip-flopped quarterbacks. Eric Zier was a future NFL quarterback. He was, to watch him throw the ball around the field versus watching, and I had watched him quite a bit before that game, versus Ohio State struggling to throw the ball with Herbstreit. They were just two different levels of quarterback. And I don't know if you recall, Georgia generally had a touchdown lead in the game. Then Ohio State would tie, and then Georgia would take the lead, and it went in that direction. But Ohio State fumbled the ball. There wasn't even a hit on the ball carrier. They had a botched exchange in the red zone that was pretty much the end of the game. There was, maybe 2 minutes left in the game, and Ohio State was in the Georgia red zone at like the 18-yard line, and they fumbled the ball, and that's pretty much ended the game, even though they got the ball back with like 15 seconds left. But Robert Smith was the star that team, and there were wide receivers on that Ohio State team that didn't necessarily shine until they got to the NFL, and we found out they were pretty good players at the next level, like Brian Stabline and Jeff Graham, guys like that. But that Ohio State team, they were just starting to bring in better talent. But Herbstreit was he was actually the footnote on him. He was John Cooper's first recruit, first signed player at Ohio State was Kirk Herbstreit. But there weren't the rankings that there are today to be able to go there and say, okay, he was the 37th quarterback in the country. But I'm pretty safe in saying that he was not highly recruited to that level. Wasn't like Notre Dame and Penn State and Ohio State and Michigan were fighting over him. Obviously, to be signed at Ohio State, he was good, but I don't know where else he had opportunities to go.
Yeah, I really got into recruiting back then too, and y'all had two really good running backs in the state of Ohio. I think Ricky Powers and Robert Smith. And do I have that right? that
Oh
sound
yeah,
right?
Ricky Powers went to Michigan.
Yeah, he went to Michigan, and I just remember the Ohio State fans were kind of like, it doesn't matter. We got Robert Smith, and I don't know. Looking back on, I don't know who ended up being a better running back. I remember Powers at some big games, but yeah, those were. I guess because I was in college at the time, I could keep up with stuff like that. There's no way I could do that now. Not being a fan of Ohio State, keep up with who's recruiting who and all that. But I will say this about Herbstreit. I'll get off. He's really grown on me over the years. I think when I see him on game day, I mean, he could be at he could be at South Dakota State, and he could be at the Navy game, or he could be at Tuscaloosa, and he still gives the teams that he covers the respect, no matter what level, how good the teams are. He genuinely cares about our sport. I mean, he goes out of his way to really promote, teams that should be promoted, that are worthy, that may not get the publicity. I really think he is a fantastic ambassador. I think everybody on game day is. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big ESPN guy. I don't care for the network. I think it's too left wing and woke for me. But I'm telling you, as soon as game day kicks off, that's one of the most all-American programs on TV. It is the best of America. It is the best young people in America. It doesn't even belong on that network, if you ask me. But those people on there, they care about our sport. And I can't say enough nice things about people like Pollock and Herbstreit and the guy that coordinates the show from Alabama. I can't remember his name, Reese Davis. They're all great.
Yeah, the three guys you just named, I have as much respect for them as anybody. Yeah, Reese Davis is a phenomenal host. He loves college football. He's exceptional at what he does. You laid it out concerning Herbstreit. He's great at what he does. And David Pollock, I always find him, he's both knowledgeable, but he's funny. He's got a certain flair. And I always liked David Pollock. I used to like, he did a show with Jesse Palmer that didn't last long on ESPNU. I think this was the first I ever saw David Pollock. I knew him from his Georgia and NFL days, but they teamed him up with Jesse Palmer, and I thought it was really good. I like Jesse Palmer too. I have respect for all those guys. I think they put a lot of work in, versus there are some guys I could name, and it's obvious that they don't. They generally know who the two quarterbacks are, and then that's pretty much it. And why they continue to have some of these guys on halftime and post game that provide no insight into the game. I don't get it, but those three are top notch.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys, it's gonna be a long off season, but now that my dogs are national champions, I'm sure as hell gonna enjoy it.
Absolutely, you should. All right, man.
All right, Mark.
Appreciate it so much. Have a good night. Oh, that was supposed to be the last call, but of course we're going to honor this call. Appreciate you being here. Welcome to the Voice of College Football.
Hey, Mark, I'm so sorry. I took my dog out for a walk, and I thought I wasn't sure where you're at in the show. My bad.
No, you're good.
Quick. This is Sean, by the way.
Hey, Sean.
Quick note about Herbstreit. He actually went to my high school. He was obviously about 20 years before
Centerville,
me, but,
correct?
Yeah, Centerville. I'm an Oak, so a lot of good Buckeyes from there, but real quick, I just want to talk a little bit about Steve Deese's ratings. I'm not sure if you guys have talked about that tonight. I'll have to watch the transcript of the video tomorrow, but it's kind of funny. He brings up the 2019 and like the way his ratings go. It's just it sounds like just it's quantity over quality, and he basically rates 4 stars like a top, let's say 70, like player number 75 is the same as like player 398. They're both 4 stars. So I don't know. I think his rating system's pretty flawed. I think though, where you can get into some good bets, I guess, is like with the Stanford, where if they are like a 5-5, or I'm sorry, like a 5-7 or 6-6 for the season, maybe you can make some money off of that. But I don't know. I just thought, looking at his ratings, the way he's got it, I just think it's seriously flawed. If you look back at like 2019, what's funny is that Michigan had 26 recruits, but they only finished like 12 or 13 points higher than Ohio State on 247. So it's I think he's definitely flawed in that respect. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, just that understand that when somebody builds a ranking system, I've done this a few times with certain things, but I will state that, okay, for example, we did all-time program rankings, and I readily admitted that there were certain things that were somewhat flawed in different categories, but for me to go through and exhaustively build some type of metric to address that would not be worth the time. Now, if somebody was going to dump $1 million on my head and I could spend, 4 months on it, that would be different. So, for example, I would love to go beyond, let's say, just a winning percentage and go to what is the winning percentage against, ranked teams, top 10 teams, top 5 teams. And I would like to also track that in terms of the final ranking of the season and not just where they were ranked at kickoff. But to do that would take forever. So, and I pointed out a number of things like that I would do differently or would make the system that I built even more intricate, but it's just not feasible. So I don't know if he runs into that. So for him to dissect that this 4 stars number 78 and this 4 stars number 429 and this 4 stars number 370, I don't know if that's beyond what he's capable of doing.
Right. No, I understand that. I just thought that it's just the quality of play. I mean, they do have the ratings like all tallied up. So that's not hard. Actually, that would make his life a lot easier just to do the total points.
I got you.
But what's interesting, I think, and what's interesting, I think, is how the transfers go into this. He does kind of mention like Alabama is just recruiting, but I would just a lot better than Ohio State or this or that. It's Alabama and Georgia. But I would say, Alabama last year, their 2 best players or 2 of their better players were transfers. So, that whole part, that whole new element in this is going to be really interesting. And I hope the Buckeyes can keep up with it. But thanks again for having a great show tonight.
Well, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much for that. And just one note on the Buckeyes, the transfer portal was not a focus for Ohio State this year. Tanner McAllister, big pickup at safety from Oklahoma State. The running back turned linebacker from Arizona State, can't think of how to pronounce his name, Tranum. And then the kicker from USC, and that's pretty much it for Ohio State. They're ranked like 75th in the transfer portal rankings. So it's just not been a focus for Ohio State. Now we'll see in the future if they, and I think they will, if things continue to go in the way that they are, that the transfer portal will have to be a big deal for everyone, I believe, to a certain extent, even if it's not. So if you look at the portal rankings right now, USC's number 1, LSU's up there. All the teams that had transition of coaches are mostly the teams that are up high, and they had to supplement issues that they had trying to retain a class, a standard recruiting class, with transfer portal additions. And you see as many as 13, 15, 17 players signed in the transfer portal. I think that's going to settle down, and I think we're just going to see that again spike for those teams that need to utilize it as a new coach takes over and kind of works the roster the way he wants it I'm going to take an informal poll right now to see how many of you guys care about where College Game Day goes. So our last caller brought up College Game Day, and I saw a College Game Day video by our buddy Chris on SG1 Sports. It did extremely well, and I had this conversation with him the other day via text. That it fascinates me that people care where College Game Day goes. Now, if you're on campus and you're wanting College Game Day to show up for your game, I get that. I'm not talking about the students on campus. I'm talking about, or anybody from the area that could show up if they wanted to. Talking about people, in the middle of Kansas caring that game day is going to go to Ohio State, Penn State, and not Alabama, Tennessee. I am dumbfounded by that. To Real MVP, does Mark know who to create polls in the chat? I know you can, but I don't know how. So anyway, since I've done the work, I will most likely go forward and produce a video on game day, College Game Day destinations for 2022 and my thoughts. I've got about 5 or 6 selections each week, and where I think College Game Day is going to land. I also was going to do the same thing with the Big Ten next that I reviewed with the ACC and the new scheduling formula and what that could look like. Yes, Uncle Rico, a new list, another one coming up. Let's see, what else do we need to do? I've got USC's top 5 newcomers. If you check on the team channels, we produced a top 5 newcomer list for a ton of teams: Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and others. And I've got to do USC, and I think I've got an Oregon list here and others. I also have, again, my top 10 running backs, top 10 wide receivers. I've got a list of tight ends I need to research and look into. And also wanted to go through the playoff years and some near misses in terms of playoff participants, but also playoff near misses. So wanted to go through that as well. Yes. If you would like schedule previews, we've got them at the Voice of College Football community on Patreon. So we've got a Michigan State release on a schedule preview there. So if you check us out on Patreon, just go to Patreon and search MarkRogersTV, then you can sign up for our Discord as well, right there on Patreon. So you get scheduled previews per request. And again, we just delivered Michigan State here recently. I asked here in a poll to the community page, we'll see how many people chimed in on this one, and I can imagine what the result is. I asked, would you like me to produce team previews? So we've done this in other seasons where I have delivered very thorough team previews for, there have been off seasons where I did pretty much everybody in the Power 5. And however, they need to be worth it. So who should I do first? Maybe my next question is going to be who I do first, and the success of that video is going to determine whether I do any other videos. So maybe we'll put the bar at, I don't know, 5,000 views. And if we get 5,000 views in the first video, I'll keep doing them. But let's see, we've got how many respondents to our poll here? Here we go. I sent this out 8 hours ago. Do you want me to produce 2022 team previews? Yes, 94%. No, 6%. That's kind of funny response by the no people. I get it. You don't care. You don't want me to. But it's kind of funny because obviously if I produce them, you don't have to watch them. So I'll get to your question here in a second, Tim. And so I think we've had 244 people comment on that. So 94% say yes, 6% say no. And we'll then take a poll to see what the request is for the first team preview, and we'll take it from there. And if we get a good response, I'll keep doing them. Oh boy. So we got Rowdy here. Now, again, when it comes to the super chats, I hate that I've got to explain myself all the time when it comes to these super chats. If I miss a super chat, does anybody really believe that I want to miss a super chat? And I understand I would be put out to a certain extent too. If I contributed a super chat and the host missed it and he got all the other ones. So understand that there are plenty of shows you can see on YouTube where there are super chats coming in like, and the host does not acknowledge them whatsoever. They just come pouring in. I acknowledge everyone. And if I miss one, I think for anybody that's watched me long enough, they understand it was an honest mistake. I didn't intentionally ignore a super chat. Never have, never will. But our guy Rowdy every lap is saying, I unsubscribed. Last time I spent $10 on a super chat, tried asking same question, spent $5 this time, and it got totally ignored again. So understand, again, I don't ignore anything. So I don't really need to be wasting my money. Good luck, but reading super chats needs a lot of work. No, it really doesn't need a lot of work. I'll take my 99% accuracy rate compared to, again, there's all sorts of people out there that take super chats and don't acknowledge any of them. So there are many things I will apologize for. I will not apologize for that. Thank you, Palcar. Yeah. It's like, it's funny. So I will acknowledge a mistake I made in a video here recently, and it was a good video. I got a lot of good feedback. I appreciate people watching it, and it got a respectable amount of views. I forget how many, but it was, we were looking at Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama recruiting, NFL draft, all that sort of thing. And what's funny is if you catch me making a mistake in a video, most likely it's because I know that subject inside and out, and I just ripped it off. I just thought, I know this, so I rip it off, and I had does anybody misspeak? You meant to say Pitt, and let's see, you meant to say Alex Van Pelt, and you said, who's another old Rick Tricano. You had an old Pitt quarterback in your memory banks, and boom, you spit out the wrong name. Anyway, but you knew exactly what you were talking about. I should have a better example than that, but I don't. If I was saying Ron Springs and I meant Timmy Newsome, and I was talking about the 83 Cowboys, well, I clearly know that Timmy Newsome and Ron Springs are two separate players. I could tell you where they went to school. I remember them. I could visualize them perfectly playing for the Cowboys in 1980 to 85-ish. And Timmy Newsome wore 30, Ron Springs wore 20. But for some reason, I just said Timmy Newsome and I meant Ron Springs. Okay, this happens all the time. I do it all the time. There's a difference between misspeaking and then saying something because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Well, it so happens. Thanks, Uncle Rico. I'll get to that in just a second. And Tim's super chat in just a second. It so happens that it's much more likely when I make a mistake in a video that I know more about what I'm talking about in that particular video, because what happened was that I just ripped off the video because I thought, I know this, looked up some things, boom, knock it out. More so than if I'm working on a video where I don't know the subject as well, because I spot check everything and I look at it, so I don't make a mistake. So I forgot that Jeff Hafley, and again, I know that Jeff Hafley was the defensive coordinator at Ohio State in 2019, but it just slipped my mind. So I was just ripping through Schiano and Grinch and and Combs and Kerry Combs, I should say. And I missed Hafley. of course, now the Boston College coach, and it just slipped my mind. So then when somebody brought that to my attention, I thought, shoot, that just slipped my mind. I should have taken a little bit more time. And why did I bring all that up? I don't know. So when it comes to super chats, I don't know what to tell you. You know, if you could see what I see, you would understand a little bit better, I think, if you were doing all these various things at the same time. And in terms of pulling up these super chats. All right, so I want to make sure I get to Tim's comment. Where is it? Bingo. Mark, how do we request Patreon chat? You said by request. Okay, so the deal on Patreon is that if you're on Patreon, Tim, just request it. Just send me a comment. You can either email me or you can send it on. Just request it there on Patreon. So it was Trevor who asked for a Michigan State schedule preview, and he just replied on Patreon. And so I get a notice anytime there's a comment made on Patreon. So I see Trevor say, do a Michigan State schedule preview. So I did it, if that's what you're asking. So Tim, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And Tim reminds me with the logo there, starting this past Tuesday, we've got a USC live stream every Tuesday at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific on the USC channel. We've added that to Miami, Florida State, Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Iowa, West Virginia, Oklahoma. USC live. And so please check that out. And also, earlier we had our guy DeAndre, and I don't think he would complain that I missed his super chat, but now I'm remembering it. But I did post it for a long, long time. DeAndre, appreciate your super chat. And Uncle Rico here. Mark only ignores the buyer's rental. Yeah, he's the only one I ignore. So when I say all that, and Uncle Rico knows this, it's understood that I ignore buyers' rentals. Yeah, I definitely do ignore him for sure. Yeah, but nobody else. Nobody else. All right. I'm going to remind everybody, Amazon, please, if you shop Amazon, use our link. It helps us tremendously. I think it's the untapped thing here that could keep this channel going. If everybody that shops Amazon, that watches our videos, would use our link, it's in the description section of all the videos. Brady says, hey, Mark, thanks for streaming so often. I have COVID. Well, that's unfortunate. Hopefully you're doing okay. And it's nice to listen to something I like while suffering. Ugh. Thanks for the great content. Brady, we wish you the best and hope for the best for you. Thoughts and prayers to Brady. Hopefully you'll get through COVID very soon here. There he is. Buyer's Vacation Rentals. I am so glad that you were with us tonight. You were being quiet. I didn't see any of your comments here, but there's Buyer's Vacation Rentals, LLC. Thank you for the contribution, sir. Thank you so much for that. SEC Dog is asking me, what has Ryan Day done at Ohio State? Serious question. He inherited a great team, did not understand defense. Why is he so great? Asking for a friend. Wink, wink. I never said he was great. So other people have said he's great, I guess. I do want to see more out of Ryan Day. So, yeah, he took over a great program. One of the 3 best programs in the country. And his first team was loaded. And that team delivered week after week after week after week. that team was taking on teams like Wisconsin that went to the Rose Bowl and just blew them out in the second half. 34-7 games against teams like Wisconsin. They beat Cincinnati, a good Cincinnati team that went 11-3, 42-zip. That was by far the best team in the Big Ten. 2019, and they go 13-0. And you can interpret that playoff game against Clemson any way you want. I tend to interpret that they were a better team than Clemson, and it was their fault that they didn't close it out. They had opportunities. J.K. Dobbins dropped a sure touchdown pass, and you're looking at, instead of 16-0, you're looking at 20-0, and other red zone opportunities that we've talked about a million times that they could have and should have beaten Clemson. I do think that they got robbed by the officials, and I know I sound like a homer, and I hate sounding like a homer, but believe me, you'll just have to believe me. If that was any other team out there, if that was Oklahoma and not Ohio State, I would be saying the same thing. I just think the refs did a horrible job in that game. I don't think they did anything intentional, but that was a poorly officiated game. That team could have been playing LSU for the national championship. Now, because of Joe Burrow and because of what LSU did to Clemson, I don't think anybody here believes that Ohio State would have won that game. But was Ohio State better than Clemson? And would they have stood up at the line of scrimmage much better than Clemson against LSU? Absolutely. So that would have been potentially would have been an epic national championship game. So that's 2019. Understand in 2020, yeah, they got blown out by Alabama in the championship game, but that team was ravaged by COVID. Talk about COVID. And they lost their best offensive weapon on the first play of the game. And there were just a lot of things that weren't right about that team and that situation in that game leading into that game. And they only played 6 games. So some people can argue that helped them. It could be argued that hurt them. They never got into a groove that season and still showed up at the national championship game, got blown out by Alabama. And then this past season, yeah, it was not a good season. When you say he does not understand defense, he's not a defensive guy. He understands defense better than I do. He understands the defense better than you do. But no, he's not a defensive coordinator. That's not his specialty. So he made a bad hire. He made a bad designation at defensive coordinator for 2021. And it most likely cost Ohio State a playoff bid. They were so much better than Oregon. We saw that the rest of the season. Why they're losing to Oregon. At the time that it happened, I was somewhat surprised, slightly surprised. But more and more as the season unraveled, or as the results came out and we saw both teams play, it became more and more curious. And it was obvious that game was blown. Credit Oregon, but Ohio State was so much better than Oregon last year. Yes, they had defensive deficiencies and they never fixed it. Not entirely. They got better, but not good enough. It's 3 seasons. Okay. It's 3 seasons. And he's 34-4. So why is he so great? Number one, I haven't rated him as great. I ranked him the 6th best coach in the country. I think that's legitimate. I think most people would rank him higher than I do. So again, I'm not playing the homer. If anything, I'm ranking Ohio State down further than most people do. Most people would rank Ryan Day higher than 6th in the country as a head coach. So that's the best I can answer that question, is that he's really, really good at what he does. Was he put on third base, to quote a rival Big Ten coach? Yeah, he kind of was. So what's he going to do with that? Well, he's done a pretty damn good job through 3 seasons. Has he gotten them to the ultimate? No. He's gotten them to the cusp of that, though, basically 2 times. Buyers, appreciate you being here. Georgia wins its first national championship in 40 years, and they start puffing their chest out. Georgia's not even in the realm of blue bloods. See you in another 40 years, SEC dog. Well, okay, there's some truth to that. Yes. There's no comparison between Ohio State's tradition and record all time and Georgia. There's not. They're not in the same category. But right now, of course, Georgia's a better football team. They showed that last year. Were they a better football team before that? Well, both of them were kind of neck and neck. You'd have to say Ohio State, Georgia between 2017 and before last season. We could debate all night who was better. Last year, Georgia was better. Therefore, right this second, Georgia's better. But all time, yeah, it's not debatable. Georgia's a top 15 program, and Ohio State's a top 3 program. But to say Georgia's not going to be back for 40 years, and again, YouTube is not letting me block this moron bot or whatever it is, the spam. I will continue to try. Let's try it again. Block. I don't know why YouTube does this all the time. They give me an error and ask me to refresh the page. If I refresh the page, we would be knocked off the live stream. You know what? The way we're going, I think we're just going to sit here and talk all night. You know, we can talk about whatever you guys want to. But buyers, thank you so much for that super chat. That's much appreciated. I have so much to do, and I say that not in a complaining way. This is in a optimistic way. So much to do for the channel, and I will be excited to be announcing something in the next month or two. So we will get to that soon. I will be excited, and I hope you guys will take it as excitedly as I do. All right. Anybody else with anything? And again, Amazon, please do that for us here at the Voice of College Football. Jump on the Amazon link. Put it somewhere where you will remember it when you do shop on Amazon. And hit the like button. I do find it a bit curious when we've got a live stream like we do tonight. We've been on for, almost 3 hours, and we've had as many as about 170 people in here. So we'll probably get a good 2,000 or 3,000 hits on this live stream, which is great. We'll have like 5% of the people will hit the like button. So please hit the like button. One Scoop John. Can't wait to see Ronnie Bell back, who had a monster first game, touched the ball a couple times, big plays, and then unfortunately, yes, out for the season. Yeah, Brady explains it pretty well right here. On defense, Day hired, meaning Jeff Hafley, someone perfect in 2019. He left after a year to go to Boston College, and Day promoted Kerry Combs. Mistake. Yes, he made a mistake. 2020 was bad, but you can understand 2021 was unacceptable, and he's good now. Well, when you say 2020 was bad, they had a bad game. Yeah, they got destroyed in the final quarter and a half, something like that. Garrett Wilson caught a touchdown pass to make it 38-24, and they had life with about 6 or 7 minutes left in the game. Life. But the defense was just not, didn't have the personnel. And, a lot of bad things came together there. A defense that had underperformed anyway all season, had preseason injuries, had Kerry Combs coordinating it, and then had more COVID issues and injuries going into the national championship game, which led to the infamous Tough Borland or Pete Werner, one of the two, chasing down Devontae Smith, covering Devontae Smith. So yeah, they were completely outclassed in that game on defense versus the offense. And, it was a game that through sometime late in the second quarter was a good game. It was 14-all. It was 21-17. And then Bama scored right before the half, I think, make it 28-17. And then they took it away from there. And again, Garrett Wilson had a long touchdown pass from Justin Fields to make it 38-24. And I'm not trying to smoke and mirror say Ohio State was in the game at 38-24, but they had a shot. Uncle Rico, 2 playoff appearances and a national championship appearance and a Rose Bowl win in his first 3 years. How horrible. Exactly. Yeah. If we were collectively as good at our jobs as some of the guys that we criticize, and they get paid the money to be criticized and held to a high standing, yes. Absolutely. So I would like to jump on either tomorrow night or Saturday. Most likely tomorrow night, we will do another live stream call-in show. And I had thrown out a question both on Twitter and here on YouTube earlier in the week. And the question was, who would you nominate as czar of college football? So we will discuss that soon. And I had made not a promise, but I had made a projection. I had hoped. I told I believe Tim in particular, I think, had said, Mark, we would do much better on the live streams if it was a scheduled live stream each week, let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern time or whatever it is. And yes, we would. But I'm not prepared to do that. But maybe after the Labor Day week or the Memorial Day weekend, there you go, Studio Roto, that we'll be able to settle on a live stream schedule. Understand that I've already got 10 scheduled every week. So I've already got 10 locked in. So that's a lot right there between, get this, and I only repeat this stuff because I know that there are a lot of people that jump on here that only know that we've got a main channel and don't have all these other channels going on. So we've got a Florida State live show on Wednesdays, along with Oklahoma, Michigan, Ohio State, and Miami on Wednesdays. On Tuesdays, we've got Nebraska and Iowa live shows, now joined by USC. On Thursday, we've got Miami. And on Friday, we've got West Virginia. So I'm locked in on 10 shows already every week. And once we get into the season, it's going to be crucial when we do these call-in shows. And because certainly we want to let everybody vet about the games that just occurred. That's why we're here all day on Saturday. And then we want to be able to jump on live a number of times throughout the week to preview the games. Michael, who's going to pass Notre Dame in recruiting rankings for 2023? Every time I ask, it's April, May. So I need a month or time. Well, it only matters in December, Michael. And my guess, if I could point to anyone, I'm guessing Alabama's going to pass and Georgia's going to pass. And I would guess Ohio State's probably going to pass. But those first two, I'm pretty sure of. Uncle Rico letting everyone know that Urban Meyer lost to 3 unranked teams his last 3 years. Yeah. Penn State, although Penn State finished in the top 10. 2016, 2017 was Iowa. They finished 8-5. And then in 2018, that was Purdue. They finished 6-7. That is the aberration of the Urban Meyer era right there, that Purdue game. Losing by 4 touchdowns. If they lose that game by a field goal, they probably make the playoff. So Porter does not believe that Ohio State's a blue blood. Okay. First of all, let's define blue blood. So to me, there's a difference between being elite and being a blue blood. Right now, Clemson is elite. Georgia's elite. They're not blue bloods. Blue bloods means that you kind of were at the foundation of the sport. Now, in college football, we're not going to go back to day one, Rutgers and Princeton and all them. But during the formative years of the sport, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, in that range, it was Notre Dame. It was Ohio State. It was Michigan, etc. And they've continued through. So to me, and I'm not saying this is the end of the debate and I'm laying down the law. I'm just saying in my eyes, blue bloods means, again, historically, all the way through. And even if you have a letdown, Texas, you're still a blue blood. Notre Dame, from the end of the Lou Holtz era up until Brian Kelly got it going, they had a rough 15 or 20 years. Not horrible, but pretty bad, pretty mediocre. So to me, the blue bloods are Ohio State. If Ohio State's not a blue blood, I don't know who is. But anyway, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas, Oklahoma, USC, blue bloods. And then if you're talking elite all time, I'll add in Nebraska and Penn State. And if you're talking about who's elite right today, right this second, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State are for sure. I'm still going to put Clemson there. And Oklahoma, sure. But Porter, when Ohio State is the best winning percentage of all time, well, Tim, when you put Ohio State and Michigan in the same sentence, I don't know why they have to be connected. They're rivals, sure, but that's like saying USC and UCLA, you've got X number of national championships. Is that problematic? Well, why does Ohio State have to take account for Michigan's and Michigan, Ohio State? And again, if I've preached anything here, it's that let's back off on how important national championships are. They are tainted and flawed. They are tainted and flawed. Sounds like a show coming up. Let's go through national championships. And, you know, we're not talking about like they're Super Bowls. They're not Super Bowls. They're not Super Bowls. They are a lot of opinion and a lot of conjecture. So there's all sorts of national championships that don't mean crap to me, and other teams that could have won national championships been given a share of a national. When teams aren't playing in a tournament to determine the champion, there should be multiple champions almost every year prior to the playoff. There should be multiple. When you've got a bunch of teams that go 11-1, why should there only be one champion? Well, when there's a vote, there's only going to be one team that's going to finish number one. But if you look at it objectively, you got a bunch of 11-1 teams in any given year that didn't play each other. Why is one of them a national champion? Because they got voted by a bunch of knuckleheads. Why? Yeah, I'm looking at our national champions here at the Voice of College Football each year. I took very few away. I mostly added because of what I just stated. Just because in 1983, the voters said that was pretty cool that Miami beat Auburn or beat Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. They should go from number 5 to number 1. Well, Auburn played a much tougher schedule, more dominant, and went 11-1. Why is Miami the national champion and not Auburn? Why not both? Under these circumstances, I don't like having multiple national champions, but these teams didn't play each other for most of college football history, these teams that competed for national championships did not play each other. So Porter and others that are knocking Ohio State, for example, in 1996, why is Ohio State not the national champion? They've got as much right to a national championship as Florida does. They both won 11-1. They played in great conferences. They won Ohio State beat the number 1 team in the country in the Rose Bowl. Why? You know what? You could even say Florida State should. I even have it right here, 1996. My national champions in 1996, not just Florida, at Ohio State, at Florida State. Florida State split with Florida just because one of those 2 games was in a bowl game. Well, the bowl game wasn't a playoff. It's just an extra game. The Sugar Bowl was it's not a playoff. It's not a championship game. Now, I'm not faulting the voters. I'm faulting the system. The reason I say that is if you place any of us back in 1996 and give us a ballot, we have to put somebody number 1, somebody 2, somebody 3, somebody. So I'm not faulting the individual voters because they had to make a decision, but I'm faulting the system. So I got our Voice of College Football national champions right there, going back to 1920. I went back to 17. Before that was a bit shaky, was really shaky. Michael, to your point, 1993. Who are my national champions in 1993? Notre Dame. And actually Auburn, who went 10-0-1 that year, but they were on probation. We can argue about that. So, all right, everyone. Yes. We can go through here. Why don't we do that? Tomorrow, either we'll talk about the czar of college football, who that should be, or we will go through the national champions. All right, everyone. Appreciate you being here. Hit that Amazon link, hit the like button, subscribe, do all the good things. Let people know that we're here talking college football. Appreciate all of you, and we will see you soon.